One sec, Jack. Switch to Discord, mate.
an awful lot about, but luckily there's a whole host of information on your screen as we speak. I'm joined by the ever-present and effervescent voice of Mr. Steve Proudly, who's also on the cameras tonight. Now, Steve, we had an exciting round last time, didn't we? And I'm sure it's going to be heating up to be exactly the same this time round.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting and very, very exciting this evening, I do believe, as we normally see motorcycles around this circuit, but obviously the GT3s are also accustomed to racing around Misano. Exciting racing, fast-flowing track with some top drivers, as we saw at Bathurst last week. This is going to be very, very interesting.
Indeed it is, and if you're new to the Clash of the Communities, well, where have you been? You've already missed one round, and it was a cracker at Bathurst as well. You have a 15-minute qualifying coming up, followed by a 75-minute race, which is going to be absolutely awesome as well. And if you're wondering what on earth happened, if you don't want any spoilers for what happened last time, well, you've got about 2 seconds until I read out who is in the provisional good standings. 1, 2, too late. Sim Sport are cracking on at the top of the team standings. Of course, they are closely followed, it has to be said, by PPR, Pole Position Racing. And then quite a way down the field, it has to be said, I don't like saying it, Steve, because we are currently hosting on their channel, but it's SRHI, and it was because of a little bit of car trouble, wasn't it? Right, sort of midway through the race, it had an engine blowout for one of the favourite drivers for SRHI. But I mean, you'll probably be not too embarrassed to admit that you're pretty proud of SimSport and how they performed at top of the standings.
Yeah, absolutely, and it just goes to show it's a community championship, so it's not all about that 1 or 2 quick drivers that are out there, and my oh my, was there some quick drivers. I mean, Bathurst, very, very difficult track last time out, but it's about how well the whole community can finish, and obviously there were some good, strong numbers in the top 10 for SimSport Racing, but that was just round 1. I mean, Misano, I'm sure it's going to throw up some new challenges, and the drivers have got to do it all over again. They've got to remain consistent, put in that good qualifying session, and then actually be consistent for a full 75 minutes of action round Misano. So this is going to be very, very interesting, very, very tight, I do believe. We've had some wet conditions during practice, but they are actually about to go out for qualifying now, so in a few moments time we are going to switch over, and we will see who are going to be the early pace setters tonight.
Very much looking forward to it as well. I mean, we haven't seen too much of the practice, so your guess is as good as mine. So make sure you're hitting up your favourite drivers in the chat. If you're looking at also the sort of how the singular drivers sort of finished last time out, obviously we mentioned that the team drivers, SimSport, are the community that is at the moment on top, closely followed by PPR. And the reason for that is mainly because they secured the top 2 position on the podium. Van der Kekelt and Chmielewski, both of PPR colours, took first and second place respectively. And although there was a pretty large gap in between them at the end, it was actually a bit touch and go with the mandatory pit stop that they were having to sort of manage throughout the race. Followed by the bottom step of the podium was Ryan Mitchell in third place, one of the Sim Sport Racing guys. And then the top 5 were also followed up by 2 more Sim Sport Racing, which is why they're on top of the communities, with Smith and Riley 4th and 5th. Then came Zimmerman, the first of the SRHI drivers. He was in 6th place. So, as we were saying before, really not the night for the SRHI drivers, but I'm sure they've picked Misano here. They must have some good drivers up their sleeve, I reckon, for this track.
Yeah, absolutely, as we are now live for qualifying. The guys are just going out there, they've done their out lap, and there's a few of them just going on to their first hot lap. But yeah, definitely, I know Mr. George Boothby, who was showing very, very well at Bathurst last time out, this is one of his favourite tracks, and in one of the recent races from SRHI, from their community, he showed how much he liked this track and romped away to victory on it. So it'll be interesting to watch Mr. Boothby and see how he fares this evening.
Well, Mr. Boothby also pretty much should have romped away with Bathurst, shouldn't he? Bathurst, sorry. Sorry, come on, Jack, get my words out. You should have romped away with it, really, but unfortunately he had an engine failure, I think, from memory, or a random... No, he had a puncture, didn't he? Because he started getting some flat spots, and then all of a sudden his tyres just let go. So that was very unfortunate for George, but he said that he's going to come back with a bit of a bang in the comments in the last stream. So with any luck, we'll see him really perform here tonight in the Ferrari. And it's an interesting format, Steve, because... you were explaining it to me last week, and it sort of took me a couple of minutes to get my head around it. But essentially, each community can use one type of car, can't they? And then nobody else in the same community can use the same kind of car. So George Boothby is currently lapping in the SRHI Ferrari. That means no other SRHI driver can use a Ferrari. However, Vidago, who is in the SimSport Racing machine, he's in a Ferrari as well, but nobody else in the SimSport Racing community can use that Ferrari as well. So it offers a little bit more of a challenge, doesn't it, for a few drivers that maybe don't specialise in that specific car.
Yeah, absolutely, and it stops people from just maybe, shall we say, selecting that one car, and the community's saying having 5 or 6 Porsches or whatever the car of choice would be for those guys, and having to run different cars, force people into different machinery, and hopefully make the racing a little bit more interesting.
It will indeed, I'm sure. Now, we've had a little bit of a... in fact, actually, I think some of the liveries have managed to fix themselves, actually, because it looks like that the Niels van der Kekelt in the PPR machine, now they raced in black last time out, although they are white on the timing tower, which is how you can tell the difference between the 3 communities. If you're looking at George Boothby in the PPR, sorry, in SRHI, he's got the sort of silvery grey number next to the make of his car and his time. Macaulay, he's in a PPR white. His number is white, you can see that. And then the SimSport Racing drivers are in red. Now, if you're looking on track, well, we're currently looking at Niels van der Kekelt, who's obviously in a black car right now. And so that is one of the PPR cars. They race in black. Their number is white. Slightly confusing. If you're looking at SRS, well, we'll go to Sim Sports now, because they are in a red car with a red number as well. So barely down the middle, pretty easy to remember. Whereas, there we go, the last one, it looks like we were having a little bit of a problem, Steve, before, saying that the liveries weren't quite working, but it looks like we've got the orange cars back for the SRHI community.
Indeed we have, yeah, fixed the problem, and there they are in all their splendour. And to be fair, I do like the SRHI liveries. I think the orange is there's something about it, isn't it? I think it's from the old days of the fast hatches with the Ford RSs and whatnot, of the burnt orange, I think was the correct term for that colour that Ford used to use on the hot hatches. But yeah, I do like the orange colour scheme of SRHI, and it'll be interesting to see what we can do. We do have a few new drivers this week, and the guys are allowed to swap and change drivers as they see fit. Still always only 10 drivers, as you said, Jack, and still all in different machinery, so no 2 cars within the same 2 cars within the same team, which, as we've said, does make it really interesting. But as no surprises to myself, having seen some of these drivers race, George Boothby up on top at the moment with a best lap time of a 132.061 it is in fact now. So he's setting the timing alight with that time at the moment. He's around about a second faster than Adam Banfield, which is that's a massive gap at this point.
It is huge, isn't it? But I'll tell you what, there's not much of a gap between himself and Ryan Mitchell, about a tenth of a second, to be honest, isn't it? Between himself and Mitchell, and then Vidago, who's improved somewhat since Bathurst. He was, I think he was lapping around in the back markers sort of area, and he seems to have done a lot better. He's in fourth. However, McCall not far behind it. I mean, they're all separated really close. I mean, at Bathurst, we were separating the drivers by, I think there were 6 drivers separated by a tenth of a second. And if you look in that mid-pack again, from about Niels van der Kekelt, who qualified in fourth place at Bathurst. He's currently in 9th, so he'll be hoping to get a little bit closer to Boothby, I'm sure. If you look at him, down to within half a second is Neutlings in 17th position. So it's a really close margin.
Interesting to see, though. Macaulay's a second up almost on his time now, so he's going to jump there up to second place. Great lap from Macaulay. I know PPR have drafted Macaulay in. I think maybe they were a little bit worried about the competition they were up against last week from SimSport, and they've drafted some other drivers in this evening to try and maybe compete a little better than they did. Or is that just my competitive train of thought coming out there, Jack? I'm not quite sure.
Well, I think maybe you came into the Clash of the Communities wielding your big sword with the SSR drivers, and I think the others were possibly taken aback. But it is nice always to see new drivers taking charge. I mean,
Definitely.
There isn't really a driver championship, is there? It's more about the community. So it's all about scoring consistent points.
It is, mate. Yeah, it's all about consistency. It's all about a bit of fun as well. At the end of the day, you know, James Warren suggested this championship from PPR. And you know, it's absolutely fantastic idea, and it's good that these three communities have come together. I am sure it is the start of bigger things, and I'm sure we will get more communities involved as we get on with it, and it'll become a lot slicker, and probably, you know, there'll be more races, and maybe, who knows, more cars on the grid. Let's hope. But yeah, it's all a bit of fun at the moment. But as with any racing, especially into community racing, you want your best team. You want your team to win, don't you? And unfortunately, as much as I can't be unbiased, I want to be unbiased, should I say? Obviously, I'm supporting SimSport as my team, but I'm sure it's going to be close, and I'm sure it's going to go down to the fourth round. There's lots and lots of points on the table, and there's lots and lots of laps to be done, as this is only the second round. As we're just watching Sam Spenkelink go around in the Porsche number 28 for SRHI. Sam is another very well accomplished driver, and it has to be said, with the current balance of performance in ACC, he's not in the quickest of cars in that Porsche GT3. He's probably at a disadvantage in that car, but if anyone can make it go, I'm sure Sam can.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. So he's part of the SRHI community, whereas on his timing tower, he actually says he's in the red numbers. So we will try and get see if we can get that sorted out, or just keep an eye on it, Steve, throughout the race.
I think just look out for it. Look at the cars, look at the orange cars, because there's nothing much we can do with the colour coding on the timing tower. That's all server orientated. As much as I said he's going to make that car go, he's just put it into the wall, so that's not the best of starts for his qualifying session, and he's not going to improve from 12th anytime soon, with only 4 minutes and 40 seconds left to go on the clock. This is a very short qualifying time, and they don't get many chances to get their best lap in. They'll go out there on a set of tyres, fueled up for the 15 minutes, and it'll be hammer time, as somebody once said, and time to try and get that perfect lap in and get as far up the grid as you can, because there's one thing for sure, these guys, it is going to be difficult to overtake, because there is only one perfect line, there is only that one perfect braking marker, there is only that one perfect apex, and they all know where it is, so getting past is going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be all about forcing errors. And as we saw last week, it'll be about pit stop strategies. And just a quick update from last week, we were obviously listening to your commentary with David Ressel as well. That was really good commentary last week. Sorry you've got to put up with me for this week, but we were wondering about certain drivers and how come they'd lost so much time in the pits. Well, what transpired in conversations after the race? Some of the drivers were telling me that they'd actually taken tyres in the pits, which they didn't have to do, but they felt they were losing so much time, but obviously that did extend their pit stops. So it was interesting to see there were people, even though it's only a 75-minute race, they were trying different strategies. Some were taking tyres, some weren't. The ones that didn't take tyres were saying it was round about a second a lap slower towards the end of the race, but obviously changing tyres could take an extra sort of 20 seconds on the pit stop. So it was a catch-22, which you did, and for some people it worked, for others it didn't.
Well, I mean, first point, I think you do yourself a disservice there, Steve. It's an honour to have you in the commentary box. And to be fair, for people who don't know, he's also doing the cameras as well, which is a mightily impressive feat, I have to say. But I mean, I think Van der Kekelt, he was probably one of those drivers that did seem to lose an awful amount of time, as I believe Chumlevski, he was pretty much 10 seconds behind it, or maybe even more. And then all of a sudden, after the pit stops, Chumlevski came out about half a second behind Kekelt, but then Kekelt just pulled away with what I assume would be the new tyres, and Chumlevski probably didn't take the new tyres. So that is a very interesting point that you raised, one that we'll have to be keeping an eye out on. Just seeing if we can sort of like make sure we keep an eye on the drivers actually in the pits and sort of almost time them, because I'm not sure if we have the sort of timing towers available to us to keep an eye on those sort of things. But we'll definitely try and call it out in qualifying. Now, the top placed SSR driver, which I'm sure nobody will begrudge you supporting SSR this evening. But
is it obvious?
I'll
is
try
it
and keep
obvious?
it impartial.
Is it obvious?
No, I don't see what they're complaining about. I'll try and keep it as impartial as I can. But at the moment, Vidago's actually just picked Mitchell to just to prove my point wrong. The top 5 obviously are pretty much dominated by PPR and SRHI at the moment. Chris Pride in the Aston Martin.
That is Cody Pride. Cody Pride.
Oh, Cody Pride. Apologies there.
I'm sorry to correct you. Yeah, sorry to correct you, but I think his dad's in the stream watching. Good evening. If Darren, I think you're his dad. But hello and apologies for Jack's mispronunciation of his name there.
Yes, I do apologise. I don't know the drivers that well, unfortunately, so I just sort of see the C and make up a word sometimes. But yeah, Cody, nice to have him along as well. And obviously Banfield here, Adam Banfield at the PPR Esports. Now, what can he do? He was in the pits quite a while ago.
He's 4 tenths up, Jack. 4 tenths.
He needs to be as well, because, to be honest, the top 4 are separated by a full second. After that, it gets very, very tight, doesn't it? And we'll talk about the sort of close margins in a minute. But by the looks of it, he's going to try and come across the line and maybe get Zimmerman's position in the top 3.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, he's dropped a couple of tenths now. He is only 2 tenths up. But if you remember back to Bathurst last week, which wasn't that long ago, we had a similar situation there, didn't we? Where the top few drivers were sort of qualifying within, a few tenths of each other. Then there was a little bit of a gap, and then everybody was really close again. It's going to be some good racing throughout the field. I mean, realistically, when you look down, as we can see on screen at the moment, down to 23rd within 2 seconds. That's some mighty impressive times. But interestingly, obviously just talking about some of the drivers that I personally know, Chris Pinchbeck down in 15th. Last week at Bathurst, he was well up into the top 10, and I think he was actually the highest placed SimSport driver. So he's having a poor qualifying, and maybe it's Mazzano that's just not his track.
Well, I mean, you can just see that Niels van der Kakelt, I mean, he's in 7th place, obviously last week's winner, and seemed to have really good pace at Bathurst as well. Even though he only qualified 4th, it's still a bit of a stretch off. I mean, if you're talking about close margins, Boothby to Zimmerman is half a second, so that's the top 3 covered by half a second. If you look at 5th place all the way down to 12th place, that's covered by half a second as well, by the same margin, and it's got about 8 drivers in it. So it's incredibly close here tonight, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how that midfield battle progresses. Ryan Mitchell comes across the line to overtake Vidago, and he will be starting a row, well, on the same row as Vidago still, so it will be a SSR 3rd row of the grid. Riley, again, he's trying to improve his time. Is he a couple of tenths up here? Is it a potential improvement as he tries to finish the lap off?
He's level pegging at the moment, Jack. He's level pegging. He's that finer margins. He really does need to gain something. He's a good driver, is Dean, and he needs to just up it a little bit. He's just over halfway around the lap, I would say now, and he's got to really make the time up in the next few corners in these big braking zones. It'll be interesting to see if he can. At the moment, the relative on my screen is showing him as about a tenth up, but he's just lost it on the exit there, a little bit of a poor exit. But he's still there or thereabouts. He could gain a tenth, which he really realistically needs to gain a good couple of tenths, and he's not going to do it. He's 1 tenth, 2 tenths now. It's going to be close. He's going to close the gap, but I don't think he's going to improve. Indeed, as we now end the qualifying session. So that's Boothby on pole with a 132, Macaulay just 3 tenths behind him, Zimmerman in 3rd place. So it's going to be a really interesting race as the top few there were very, very close.
Yeah, Benjamin Simmons is asking in the chat, how is the weather decided? Is it random? Well, can you shed any light on that, Steve? Do you have any idea?
It is supposed to be random, and I say supposed to be because they weren't expecting any rain earlier, but they did get some rain, so I think it's pretty much random. I might stand to be corrected in the Discord chat later by some of the guys, but I think, I do believe it's random.
Well, it would be certainly very exciting, wouldn't it, at the last 15 minutes of the 75-minute race, if we do get a sudden downpour. Those who have gone very long on the pit stops, I'm sure, will be pretty pleased about that. And you never know if it is a random weather. That could be a strategy in the pits, couldn't it? I mean, if you do all of a sudden get rain and you've already done your pit stop and you're out there on slicks, all of a sudden you're a little bit buggered, aren't you, for the last 15 minutes? Whereas if you've kept your fuel to the best of your ability and your tyres haven't gone off too badly, all of a sudden you come into the pits and you stick some wets on, your quid's in, aren't you? All of a sudden, you're 3 seconds quicker than everybody else. So as the grid's forming up, we can have a chat about maybe what we expect from the rest of this race. To be honest, there's I mean, it's just a lovely looking grid as well. The different colours that we've got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. It is indeed. But I think, like I said, reference the Bathurst race. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do strategy-wise. A few of the cars, namely the Bentley, could actually do this race on one full tank of fuel and literally not have to pit, although they do have to do a mandatory pit stop. But what that says to me is that that Bentley could go literally towards the end of the race, jump in for a couple of litres of fuel just to satisfy the mandatory pit stop, as it were, and that would do the job. The Mercedes, however, that drinks fuel, and that can only just, if memory serves me right, if you are on engine map, race map, you can literally just about manage an hour with some fuel saving. So that car, I wouldn't expect them to see them go more than an hour. However, you know, once you get 40 minutes into the race, well, 20 minutes into the race, even to 30 minutes into the race, anybody could pit and make it to the end. So strategy is wide open. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens. And again, I'm not quite sure. It's a long time since I've driven Mazzano, and I'm just struggling to remember how hard it is on the tyres. Not quite sure if they're gonna, you know, be forced to take tyres, or whether some of them will be able to eke it out and you know, make the tyres last to the end. I don't think the curbs have too much impact. I don't think they'll be struggling with tyre pressure loss here, but we'll have to wait and see. As Cody Pride's granddad is also watching, so good evening, Cody. We've got Gene Pinchbeck supporting Chris and saying, come on SimSport, show them the way. Good luck to all. Thank you very much, Gene, for that. We've got plenty of people in the chat, plenty of people showing their support, so please just keep typing away. Tell us which drivers you're supporting. We'll do our best to bring them up on the stream for you while we're concentrating on the battles. And yeah, I think at this point all that's left to say from me, Jack, is you know, as biased as I am towards SimSport, is good luck to all the drivers, because it's a cracking 30 car grid with some real talent on there.
Well, I think that sounded genuine enough there, Steve. I think we'll roll with that. No, I mean, everybody in the chat as well, please do let us know how Mazzano is on the tyres, because as Steve said, I mean, we're not an expert on every single track on every single sim, so it'd be very interesting to get some, maybe Nard Cox, Chmielewski, who's clearly not taking part because he's typing away, unless he's doing that sat on the grid. We're very impressed, but I actually can't see his name, so I very much doubt he's doing that. Yeah, do let us know how Mazzano is on the tyres and what you expect on strategy-wise. But we only have 7 seconds left, and I expect we're going to have a full lap of under the safety car conditions before we go green.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm just replying to a message. Someone having an issue with the stream, but we are live, and I can assure you it's working. People are watching, so we are good to go.
Yeah, it's speaking of good to go, the drivers are now off on their warm-up lap. Now, unlike a few sims, the actual warm-up lap is quite important at ACC, isn't it? You can actually generate warmth in the tyres and in the brakes as well going into that first corner. There's 1 or 2 sims. I don't believe iRacing does it quite as well as ACC. So there's a reason why these drivers are really spacing themselves out to try and get. Oh, that's a little bit too a little bit too slow probably there by Macaulay. Little bit of realism sort of jumping out of you there, unfortunately. But yeah, there's a reason why these drivers are really slowing down, hitting the brakes hard, weaving properly, and then obviously trying to give it a boot full of power to release the rear wheels and try and warm them up as much as possible. Very important, see, because at the end of the day, the ability to get off the line and stop into the first corner, you can gain 2 places or you can lose 5, can't you? Depending on how well you warm the car up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's not all won and lost. It's not all won in the first corner. It can be lost. However, you can lose a lot of positions. Sometimes it's better just to try and, you know, obviously try and take advantage of any mistakes that are made ahead of you, but not always push too hard, and just try and settle into that rhythm, weigh the opposition up, and just start to apply pressure. Drive a sensible race. Be ready to take advantage of any mistakes, and just really assess your opposition and just see how the race pace goes. Because yes, okay, they've qualified in this order, but qualifying's out the window now. That's got them the grid slot. The race pace could be a different story. They could be running different fuel loads. You know, they could get the heat into the tyres differently, and they could, you know, just general different driving styles. It's all to play for, and it's all to find out now. With you know, they've got to really weigh the opposition up and play the long game. 75 minutes, as we saw last week. You know, we had cars dropping down the order, but by the end of the 75 minutes, they were back up there again, and they were fighting further in the top 10. So it's never over till it's over.
They were fighting extremely hard as well, and to be honest, at some points it looked like they were sprint racing, and with the margins that we've seen between the likes of 5th and 20th place, it is almost like sprint racing, isn't it? But these guys are seasoned professionals in terms of the endurance scene, so we quite often see them really bunch up, and all of a sudden everybody's keeping it safe, keeping the distance. But speaking of bunching up, they're starting to go 2 by 2, aren't we? Because we're about to go racing here, Steve, and for the next 75 minutes, they'll entertain us, I'm sure, with thrills and spills around this Misano circuit. Lovely looking grid, and it's George Bentley who's going to lead the way in the Ferrari, followed by Macaulay in the Bentley. Who's going to come out on top here? I'm sure the Ferrari fanboys will be hoping that Misano, the Italian track, will be favourable to them as they come around the final corner. It's going to be a boot full of power from Boothby, I'm sure, in a couple of seconds. A few little gaps following in the background there as well. Vidago giving a big gap. Maybe he's hoping to get a really good run and try and launch himself down the inside into the
That's
first
a green
corner.
light.
To see as the green flag goes. Boothby is off, and it's a good start by Macaulay, it has to be said, around the outside. It looks like that it's going to still be Boothby going into it. There we go. Yeah, Macaulay has blended back in. Zimmerman has kept his place in 3rd place as well, but it looks like Banfield's got a DT next to his name.
Yeah, obviously must have done something wrong on the start there, because he's now got a drive-through which would say that he was out of position or he went before the green lights. So it's you know, unfortunate for the start, but is that Boothby that's off into the distance now? It's just while the timing tower sorts itself out, but yeah, definitely that was an interesting start from everybody.
Yeah, well, it certainly won't be Dave Hedges, who it was showing at the top of the timing tower. It is George Boothby in the Ferrari for now, and as you said, Banfield with that drive-through penalty, that'll really hurt him. I'm not sure how quickly he has to take that, but I'm sure he'll probably be trying to stretch for as long as it possibly can. Normally you have about 3 laps to try and take it. Oh, Simsport Racing, Steve's heart drops out of his mouth as he sees the contact between the 2 drivers, and Wilkes ends up falling back for Pinchbeck, I believe that was. Vidago's still at the top of the Simsport Racing cars, but he's in 4th place. That means that Mitchell must have dropped down, and he has 2 positions. Van der Kokelt has picked up a couple of places. He's in 6th place. Although keep in mind that everybody will pretty much inherit 1 position when Banfield comes in for his drive-through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like some of them are running 2 by 2, as we see back there, 2 Simsport, 2 SRHI cars. But yeah, everything relatively clean. Couple of mistakes from some drivers there, but nothing too dramatic by the looks of it, as they're all just settling down now to really set the pace and set the tone for the next 75 minutes. But yeah, George Boothby really putting the hammer down and just setting the track alight and going away with it. Banfield, just for reference, with that drive-through, he has 3 laps to serve that drive-through penalty before it becomes potentially a disqualification.
Yeah, and Boothby, to be honest, it looked like he was pushing the car too hard last time, didn't he? Or that he might just... That basically, it looked like his casual race pace was still about half a second quicker than everybody else. So I fully expect Boothby, if he can get into the rhythm, to start pulling away unless he gets traffic in X, Y, Z, maybe a damage here and there, but like he did last time. But with fingers crossed, we're not going to see any drivers fall off the circuit thanks to punctures or anything like that again. As we're looking at Pride, he's got a lot of pressure up behind him by Maltrek. You might be able to correct me on that one, Steve. But
that was near enough for me, Jack. Near enough for me. But yeah, Cody Pride, he's a driver that I expect to see definitely in the top 6. Obviously, just a little bit out of position at the moment and suffering with some pressure as well, as you say. But I do expect to see Cody hopefully make his way up a little bit further. Although at the moment he's looking to go a bit further back, which is not what I expected to see. We will see. Hopefully he'll have a better race than he did at Bathurst. If you remember, he was racing Pinchbeck very close, but then suffered quite a bit of bad luck at a couple of points through the race, which pushed him back down the order, and then I think he had a malfunction that put him out of the race.
Yeah, and I'm sure his fan base who are watching in the watching the stream won't be too pleased if he ends up getting similar bad luck. They'll be supporting very loudly. I'm sure as Banfield has now come in to serve his drive-through penalty and is all the way down in 18th position. But Macaulay is now 1.169 seconds back from Boothby. Well, to be fair, he's actually gained 0.3 of a second there, but I still wouldn't expect it to really close up much more than that, would it? I think it's going to only extend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these top guys, these top three guys now, they're really, putting the hammer down, and they've really extended a gap. None of them are under pressure from each other at the moment. They've all got a little bit of breathing space, as we see Boothby out in front at the moment. So they've done a textbook start. They've got a clean start. They've broke away. They've broken the slipstream, importantly, as well, from each other, and they're spreading out. And Boothby, he's away 2 laps in and already 1.3 seconds up the road. That's a very, very impressive first couple of laps from Boothby. But as I said in the opening, he does like this circuit. He said in an interview at one of the previous races that this was one of his favourites. So it's his at this point, at this early stage, it's almost his race to lose.
Yeah, and it's worth noting as well that, I'll tell you what, that is a good-looking BMW, although, I'm not entirely sure what's happening to it.
I think we've got a connection issue.
Yeah, well, we were having problems with the server beforehand. Hopefully they'll sort themselves out. But we'll go back to talking about a little bit about Bathurst, maybe. I'll tell you what the standings that we've got here tonight, because Zimmerman and Boothby are showing that SRHI are back with a vengeance, aren't they? They're in 1st and 3rd place. PPR running well in 2nd and 4th as well, and then you've got 2 or 3 of the SimSport drivers, and as we're having to just cut away to see if we can sort out a few of the connection issues. Apologies, it's not on our end. It's unfortunately on ACC's end.
It's sorry to interrupt, Jack. Just to keep you and the viewers up to date, it looks like they were having a server issue. Everybody's ping, which is your connection, was through the roof, which is why all the cars were jumping around all over the place. And somebody has opted to restart the session, which was probably the most sensible thing to do. However, everybody's pings are still way through the roof, so I'm not quite sure what we're going to have to do here. Maybe a server restart, not quite sure. But as Jack said, we were having issues earlier on before we went live with the Kunos servers not responding. So this is just a technical issue that is beyond our control, but hopefully we will be able to do something and get some racing underway very shortly.
Mr. Mars has given the idea that maybe we should just have a destruction derby, which I think would be quite entertaining, to be honest. The ping was causing that more than the drivers anyway, so we're all pretty much having that. Truckers MP never failed. Wreckfest League. I very much doubt that ACC is really prepped up for that sort of thing, but you never know. If we just need a 15-minute race to fill the gap, you never know.
Well, you say it's not prepped up for it, but I just say Monza, turn 1, public server. That could be, it's always interesting. But no, I mean, the cars are sat on the grid. Some of the pings have settled down somewhat now. So we will attempt, I think, to get things underway and see if we can get some racing again. What that does mean, though, interestingly and disappointingly for the top few drivers, is that they're going to have to do it all again. And after we were just saying what a fantastic start such as Boothby had made, and Macaulay, definitely they were up there 1st and 2nd in clear air, not really under any pressure from anybody, and literally by the end of lap 2 they were just hot lapping. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can replicate that start, as we have got round about 1 minute and 45 seconds to go before they will start the formation lap for the 2nd time.
Yeah, a bit gutting all that sort of progress is lost, but I'm sure one driver who's probably not too disappointed that that's been the case is Banfield, because he no longer has that drive-through penalty, does he? So no. Banfield's probably singing and clapping around his room.
Yeah, take 2 for Banfield, see if he can get it right at the 2nd time of asking. It'd be interesting. Simon Pikes has turn it on and back off again. That could be worth a try, and it wouldn't be the first time, but we'll see what happens. And Chris Hill says the same. So if it goes wrong again, Chris, we'll drop you a line for some more technical advice, buddy. See if you can come and sort it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be fair, it is a bit of a joke, but I can't understand Crystal's second comment. But it's definitely, hopefully, going to be sorted out now. I mean, with any luck, we were having a few issues beforehand, but then we got all the way through a bit more practice while we were waiting, and then we had qualifying in the first bit of the race. So fingers crossed it can last 75 minutes or 80 minutes. Really, it needs to last, because obviously we had this we have this green flag lap. And like you said, I mean, realistically, the front drivers did it before. They could probably be able to do it again, but the last thing they want to do is get caught out now by a potential sort of slow start or missing the lights, you know. But these guys are used to that, aren't they? It's not like this is their first ever race start.
No, this is not their first rodeo, as the old saying goes. But basically, I mean, I think for me, not often that I qualify up near the front, but when you do, I always find it a bit easier to start near the front. Obviously, there's pressure from behind, but there's not too much to go wrong in front of you. It's those midfield drivers that are gonna, you know, they're the ones that are gonna be like, oh no, we've got it all to do again, because they're the ones that can trip over each other quite easily. They're the ones that have really got to keep their eyes peeled for what's going on around them and avoid any mishaps. And was it Pinchbeck, I think, that had a bit of an off on the first couple of corners, so he'll be glad of the restart. Regan Mitchell got a very poor start, he lost a couple of positions, but then you've got the likes of Vidago that had a good start, and some of the other guys further down in the mid pack that will actually be thinking, you know, that they'll be the ones that are unhappy they've got to do it all again, I think.
Well, I'm sure these guys really just want to jump in and start racing, so if it gives them 5 extra minutes of racing, then I'm sure they won't complain too much. With any luck anyway, obviously.
Chris Hill's just rearranging his words in the chat, so he's on it, he's sorting it, and then he's going to come and sort any technical problems out that we may have.
I was going to say, I wasn't sure what was happening with his comments. I thought maybe he should turn it off and turn it back on again, see if his keyboard works again. But no,
yeah, Benjamin Simmers says that's one way to get your drive-through cleared. Yeah, I think that's quite extreme, Benjamin. I would not suggest that Mr. Banfield had done that, but yep, it's definitely got the drive-through cleared.
Back in the day, back in about 2010 or something, people would be claiming that he's got a lag switch, wouldn't he? As a quite common and popular thing on Call of Duty back in the day. But yes, hopefully no one was hacking the servers. I'm sure they weren't. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. But where is George Boothby disappeared off to?
We've got a comment in the chat from Adam. He says the leader's wheel is broken. That is gutting if that's the case.
Oh.
I mean, Boothby was on fire as usual round Mazzano. One of the fastest men I've seen around Mazzano, and very, very consistent driver, George. So obviously unlucky last week with the issue of tyres at Bathurst, and now with a technical issue with his wheel, it seems. So let's see. Simon Pike says yes, it worked. I think he's talking about the drive-through issue, but yeah, Lewis saying he just got DC'd, so DC from the server, so disconnected. So yeah, that's unfortunate for Mr. Boothby.
We're having nightmares here today, aren't we? But McCauley, actually, although he's been gifted pole position, he actually just threw it off in the warm-up lap, which is something that a driver never lives down, especially if it's broadcasted, isn't it? I'm sure the mates will be taking the mick out of him going forward. As we started to punch up.
I did see him go off, and I thought I won't mention that, but thanks, you did that.
Oh no, I'm definitely calling that out. If someone chucks it off in the green flag, lad, that deserves to be called out. I'm sure McCauley won't mind too much. But I mean, he had a great start in the first attempt anyway, as well. So he's going to back the drivers up now and see if he can get a similar thing. But all of a sudden, there's 2 Bentleys on the front row of the grid, and they have an advantage with the pit stops as well, having the biggest fuel tank available to them. So as they come around the final corner, it's about to go boogity, 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 as the Americans say, for their NASCAR racing. McCauley on the front row, Zimmerman alongside him now, and we do have green flag running, and we are away here. And it's a great start by McCauley. Zimmerman might be under a little bit of pressure by Banfield, but look at Ryan Mitchell up the inside. Not quite happening yet. I have to say the track is looking a little bit slippery, I would say. So, there's a little bit of contact there by the SRR driver, and we have a spinner in the background as well. Valenduke has a drive-through penalty this time round, so all the way down to 21st place. Won't affect the front runners too much, but it's still another driver with a drive-through, and Macaulay Zimmerman pulling away from the likes of Banfield. And as the timing tower sorts itself out, it'll do this for a couple of seconds, but I'm sure I will reassure you that it will sort itself out. It is the 2 Bentleys leading the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Macaulay has done what he needs to do and got that Macaulay. Macaulay's got the car off the line when the green lights went. He's all clean, no drive-throughs, no penalties, and he's going to be putting the hammer down now and seeing if he can break the toe from Zimmerman. I was going a little bit deep in there, and Zimmerman is trying to get up the inside. It's easy for you to say, but he's definitely in the slipstream now, and it's just Bentley against Bentley. This is going to be interesting to see if he can do anything in the slipstream as they go through there absolutely flat out, as they just bear right now and into a very difficult braking zone, and Zimmerman's lost it across the grass, and we're going to have to see what's going on there. Has everybody got past him, and how is he going to rejoin safely? Missed the corners, going to lose a few positions, but it doesn't look like he collected anybody else.
Oh, that's what I call an early apex. 2 times in a row as well by Zimmerman, as he's going to come. I think he's just blended into 5th place, just behind Niels van der Kekelt. But however, it's not over there, is it? Because all of a sudden, Vidargo, Vervoort, Makesh, and Spenkelink is really hot on his tails of Banfield in the McLaren. So all of a sudden, Macaulay, under enormous amount of pressure, the 2 Bentleys with the other Bentley following him through. He's now in 1st place and got a full 2nd, just like Boothby did in the first attempt at this race start. And we're looking at Kekelt going up the inside of Banfield, I believe that was. So Kekelt now getting himself into that podium position and showing a bit more pace than we expected after his Bathurst triumphancies. And, well, I expect maybe he'll be able to catch Ryan Mitchell, who all of a sudden he had a poor start in the first attempt, and the server reset has gifted him a 2nd place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Regan Mitchell up to 2nd place there, absolutely fantastic, and he'll be doing his best now to maybe tag onto the back of Macaulay. But it's all going on here with Vervoort and Marcek all battling away very, very close together, swapping pieces of tarmac like they're literally on a sixpence, and side by side now down the back straight, absolutely flat out into that, what I was going to say, very, very difficult braking zone. Slight right, lift off the power, watch out for that lift off oversteer, and got to really balance the power and the brake through there to keep everything in check. But currently it's looking like Macaulay is away out front, and he's got a bit of breathing room now with that mistake from Zimmerman early on. He's now managed to, he's just over a 2nd away from Regan Mitchell. Regan Mitchell following behind with Kekelt another 1.3 seconds further back.
Yeah, and then pretty much everybody else. I mean, Zimmerman is 2/10 off, and he's about as close as anybody else is on this track, which is good to see. I mean, something that I was going to point out on the first time round, but we'll roll with it here, is the fact that you know, in qualifying there was such small margins. We're talking hundredths of a second. But as soon as we get into this race, thanks to the fact that it's obviously 75 minutes, the drivers are so sort of experienced that they sort of almost gap themselves out, don't they, to make sure they know that the best opportunity for doing well in this race is by getting into space and rhythm. But they're not doing that here. They're tuning in, and they're just proving me wrong. Here's Riley and DeBon, I believe that was, and the Honda going side by side. Yeah,
I think that was Riley's mistake. He went far too deep in the previous corner, and that just gave DeBon the absolute gifted opportunity to get up the inside, but unfortunately for him he couldn't make it count, and he's had to slot back in behind. But it's there are a few close battles going on here and there. The Mercedes here on the Lexus as they just coming out onto the straight now. It'll be interesting to see if the Lexus has got the legs on the Mercedes, although the Merc is tucked up. That is Pinchbeck in the slipstream. He'll be looking to draw right up behind that Lexus and see if he can do anything as they come towards the braking zone. But I don't think he's going to be close enough, as he just basically shows his nose on the inside, but he's nowhere close enough to send it up the inside on the braking zone. It's line astern again as they're going to come around the last couple of corners to complete another lap.
Yeah, and I have to say, I don't know about you, Steve, but the track is looking a touch slippery, isn't it? It's I know it's in the night time, and I know ACC is a fantastic looking simulator, but I think maybe some of these mistakes that we're seeing are thanks to the fact that maybe the track is a touch, maybe not damp, but just a touch slippery.
I think the word you're looking for is cold, Jack. If the viewers just cast their eyes up to the right-hand side, the top right of the screen, you can see the weather forecast for the next 30 minutes. The track condition, which is optimum grip at the moment, which means it's pretty close, if not thereabouts, for the maximum grip it can get for these conditions. And these conditions are the temperature, which is 11 degrees air temperature, 11 degrees track temperature. That is relatively cold for a racetrack. These boys will have to work pretty hard to keep the pressures up in the tyres. Obviously they will have overpressured, they'll have been practicing testing settings and things like that, so they'll have upped the PSIs to try and keep the right pressures in there, but that's not to say they've got the right temps and grip won't be as good as it may be in some of the warmer conditions.
The Bentley there going up the inside of the McLaren. That was Zimmerman on Banfield, I believe. So nice little battle going all the way down. Mark Hescher as well, chasing down Vidago, who, well, it's safe to say he didn't get the worst start, did he, in the second time of asking, but it wasn't quite as good as his first one. And the drivers that have really benefited from this server restart, I'd say, probably Ryan Mitchell and Bender Kekelt. Zimmerman are losing out on a potential podium position, and I tell you what, Kekelt has really driven away as well. He's 2.5 seconds clear at the moment. Here is Rommel in the Porsche, which you mentioned probably isn't the fastest car about Mazzano.
It isn't, mate, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of different abilities on this server, and some of these cars, in my hands, most of them look slow, but in some of these drivers' hands, any of them look fast. And that Porsche, I mean, I love driving the Porsche. I think it's a great, fun car to drive, and I do enjoy it. And you may just be seeing me out at the next round at Donington in the Porsche representing SimSport. So all the banter I'm giving out tonight, somebody else may be giving me it back next week as I take to the track myself. But yeah, definitely it's a difficult car to get the most out of. You know, you can drive it up to maybe 80% of its potential, but it's these true aliens that can get that extra last 20% out of it and really get it to perform well. It's not the easiest car to hustle around at its fastest.
No, absolutely not. Like most cars, to be fair, isn't it? All of a sudden you can get, I remember, it's a lovely cutback. I have to say, I'll finish my story in a minute as we just applaud that cutback there by Rommel on Wilkes, but he's not quite got the job done. In fact, yes, he has. It was just the perspective. I think, yeah, he's thundering into the right hand, and then he's going to go into the braking zone on the inside. Yep, he's got that done and dusted. It's pretty safe to say. And a lovely little cutback by Rommel there on Wilkes. And like you were mentioning before about the sort of last 10th or last 10% basically a driver. I mean, I was always relatively quick in real life in the Ginetta G40, and I came second in the championship and got a couple of pole positions and fastest laps and everything. But whenever my driver coach would jump into the car, I think I'd set a flying lap, set the lap record or something. They'd jump into it, and all of a sudden they go 2/10 quicker. And it's like, how on earth do these aliens just get the car? They jump in. 3 laps later, they smash the lap record. It's like, I've spent 2 days trying to get to that. How on earth have you managed to do that? And that's the sort of standard we're looking at here.
Absolutely, you know, sim world, real world, it's, you know, you've got different abilities, and it does, you know, you know yourself when you hit a new track for the first time, you're sort of setting your lap times, and you think you're going as fast as you can, but with practice and with time, all of a sudden you can be even 2-3 seconds a lap faster, and wonder where the hell you got that time from. Equally so, you see some of these, shall we keep calling them aliens, but you see some of these aliens setting times, and you're thinking, how are they a full second faster than me? Where can they possibly be making that time up? But what it is, and I'm told what it is, I still can't find it myself, but it's an extra tenth in the corners, and you imagine there's 10 corners, a tenth in each corner, you've got a second, and that's where they find it. They just hit that perfect line every corner. They gain that tenth, and a tenth of a second isn't a lot, but it all adds up. It's, you know, it's the old saying of count the pennies and the pounds look after themselves. Count the tenths and the seconds will come.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds easy, a tenth of a second. Sounds like nothing, does it? But I mean, that's probably 1 mile an hour per corner minimum speed. But it's just so hard to gain that little mile an hour in the mid-corner speed and not run wide on the exit or something. It really is all about timing.
Absolutely, and talking about timing, Joe McCauley now 3 seconds, 3.174 seconds up the road. Regan Mitchell still holding second place, as you can see. Regan just in the back of the shot there. In fact, no, that's a Bentley. Sorry, that's my mistake. That's somebody that's been lapped. But Regan, just came into shot there a lot further back. But he's struggling to. Well, he's not been able to match the pace of McCauley at all. McCauley's best lap so far is a 1:33.264. Mitchell's is a 1:33.8. So we're looking at over half a second, about 6/10 on the best lap. Regan's down, and I can say on his last lap he was 6/10 down on McCauley. So McCauley is really stretching his lead now, and he's almost at the point really, Jack, where he can probably not ease off, but he can manage his pace very much with a 3.5 second gap.
Yeah, McCauley won't be sulking, will he? You could almost argue that he's pretty much home alone in the amount of space that he's got at the moment. Speckling, I thought you liked what I said there.
I see what you did there. See what you did.
Yeah, I was trying to put in McCauley sulking, but he was so far ahead of everybody else, I was like, he's going to be pretty happy. I'm not sure I'm going to get that in. Yeah, Spenkelink in 9th place. He's under a lot of pressure, isn't he? And I mean, we've seen a lot of moves going into this score, and it seems to be one of those popular, doesn't it? As the cars are so much under load, and all of a sudden you get 3 apexes that you're pretty much on the inside for if you get to the right-hand side, but it's still an enormous amount of respect that these drivers are giving to each other, giving them the racing room.
Yeah, but look at those guys behind him. I mean, Spenkling, there's always contact.
Oh, say that! Oh, well.
That was that
curse, whatever, you did see it.
Was that Cody Pride that made contact? I think it was, unfortunately. Yeah, Sem, he won't be happy with that. But knowing Sem, seeing him race many times with SimSport and SRHI, he will get his head down. He won't drive too angry now. It might take him a couple of corners to calm down, but he will focus, and he will head back up the field, and he'll do his best. And it's a recovery drive, but I'm sure he'll recover a few positions. He is a consistent driver, is Sem.
Yeah, I will apologise there to Sem, because I feel like that was the commentator's curse acting, unfortunately, through you then. So I do apologise. Here is Cody Pride, and obviously the driver who was semi-involved with that, with a nice-looking BMW at the inside of I knew the name of them before, but I'm just going to call him V at the moment.
Marcel
V, yeah, because it sounds so good. It rolls off the tongue lovely, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And I have to say, that BMW, it's beautiful, isn't it? It's not quite on liveries, but it's a beautiful looking car.
Yeah, absolutely. But he really, it was a nice move that he made on Cody there, and just kept it up the inside. And he's got the legs. So Cody's struggling with pace a little bit tonight. He's up to 12th. He's made a couple of places, but he's struggling a little bit. But it's just like you say, some good racing and lots of different machinery on show, which is always good to see, because all these cars do have different characteristics. They'll all handle that a little bit differently, have slightly different top end, different gear ratios. So you'll see them pulling out the corners, some better than the others. Talking about the Porsche and how it can be difficult to get the best out of it, the one thing the Porsche is good at is squatting down and accelerating out of the corners with all that weight over the drive wheels. It really does fire out of the bends very nicely. Yeah, some of these guys are absolutely top-notch racing, giving each other lots of respect, and the pressure that some of the guys are soaking up, as we see now. I think is that Rich Smith, I think, that's soaking up some pressure, as it might be Simon Wilkes actually. It is Simon Wilkes that's soaking up the pressure from Marcel, and Cody just back a little bit. And then we've got Dave Hedges, one of the admin from SSR, driving the Porsche. He drew the short straw this week for the Porsche. It was Steve Haley last week, another admin, and it's my turn in the Porsche next week. That tells you a little bit about the Porsche. Nobody wants to drive it.
I was going to say, is it just the curse of the admins that you guys have to drive it? It's,
absolutely,
you don't want to give
absolutely.
it to anybody else. You don't want to give the curse to anyone.
It's not that we don't want to give it to anyone else. No one else will drive it, so we've got to.
Well, I'm sure you'll wield it well as the Lexus starts to go drifting. As
Cody Pride side by side.
Yeah, it's definitely a close battle, this one, as they go to the double right-hander. That's Dave Hedges going to the inside, and it doesn't need to be that far on the inside, does it? Because Pride goes very wide. Luckily, he keeps out the kitty litter, and in fact, I'm amazed that he managed to keep it going back onto the water circuit with the amount of track rubber and marble seal picked up on the car, but he'll have to try and get his head back down. He's been involved in some dramatic last couple of laps. As we now look at Niels van der Kelt and Zimmerman, a very close little battle that they've got going on here. And really, the Bentley is an extremely strong car by the look of it, isn't it? Because it was first and second at one point. It's now first and fourth at least, lapping well here at Mazzano.
Yeah, well, I think to be fair to Zimmerman, he's got the pace, hasn't he? It was that early mistake that cost him with the very early apex towards the end of lap 1 or 2, I think it was, which cost him all the places, as we'd just seen there. The Bentley of SimSport just getting out of the way, obviously being lapped very early on. Be interesting to see or find out what the reason is for that, what's gone wrong with the Bentley. But Zimmerman really making ground up now, and I'm just going to try and have a look at his lap times. Yeah, he's lapping round about the same as Van der Kekelt in front, although his best lap time is again around about 6/10 faster than Kekelt, so he's got more pace than that Lexus in front of him in the Bentley.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the battle sort of comes to fruition throughout the rest of this race. And Banfield with a little bit of a twitch there, and luckily for him, it's not too long until the next braking zone, isn't it? Because Marquez probably saw that and thought, you know what, I'm going to lick my lips and send it here. But he didn't really get the opportunity. But that's maybe showing that Banfield is feeling a little bit of pressure. Maybe the tyres a touch too hot or a touch too cold, or the car balance isn't quite right, or maybe it was just a one-off freak mistake. But Marquez is going to try and take advantage of anything he can find here going into the first corner. They've built up a touch more of a gap now, so Banfield can just about breathe. But all over the park here, Mazzano, promoting really close racing, it has to be said. And we said that, you know, Steve, it's a bit of a narrow track, but they're showing that you can still race. And if anything, the narrow track is promoting inventive overtaking.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a little bit of aggression there, but thankfully so far it seems to be very measured aggression, as we're just seeing Marchek going down the inside now, and he's in pole position for the inside line for this next corner. I think he's going to get that position, but it's just going to be interesting to see if he can get the cutback, but Banfield can get the cutback, but I don't think he can, and he's now coming under pressure from Verdago, who's going to be looking to attack in the next braking zone, but not going to be close enough. He's going to have to try and get a really good exit here, is Verdago, and see if he can just get the toe down here now, and he's very, very close, but I don't think he's going to be close enough, and I don't think there's going to be anywhere for him to get alongside.
No, it's a difficult one, but again, fantastic racing. It's almost like sprint racing. But speaking of a driver that is putting in sprint lap times, Macaulay at the front of the field. Oh, well, we'll go back to him in a minute, because look at this action with the BMW Marcel V and Wilkes. Now, Wilkes looked like he didn't really fight that too hard against Marcel, but I think, to be fair, nothing was getting in the way of the BMW flying up the inside there. It was either get out of my way or we're having an incident.
Yeah, absolutely, and it'd be interesting now because Hedges is on the back of Wilkes as well, and Wilkes isn't a slow driver, but it'll be interesting to see if he any team orders come into play. I know how you do like team orders, Jack, and whether the admin role gets you past, is worth a position, as Wilkes actually puts it in really deep there. I think he was unsighted. He was that close up behind Marcel that he was unsighted, missed the braking zone, and that's just gifted Hedges the position. And now there is another SimSport car up behind Wilkes, and I think that's Aaron Martin Pilkington. So SimSport are actually battling over these positions themselves.
Well, as long as it wasn't admin orders, team orders sending Wilkes wide, I'm sure it'll be fine. But no, I mean, it's SimSport, as you said, always tripping over each other. They're 11th to down to 15th, those top 5 drivers. Tell you what though, Van der Keuvel, he's having to defend hard though, isn't he, going into the double right-hander. And Zimmerman, you said before, Steve, he's got the pace. He's clearly got an awful lot of pace in that Bentley. And he's going to be really quite disappointed the fact that he obviously took 2 early apexes across the grass and then rejoined. He didn't lose too many positions, but he lost a lot of track time. And then carving through the field requires, obviously, even more time to be taken up, which has left Macaulay 8.5 seconds out in the lead of Mitchell. Van der Keuvel and Zimmerman are about 2.5 seconds behind Mitchell. So it's going to be a bit of a sort of monumental effort for Zimmerman to try and catch up to the front 2. But if he can get back on the podium, I'm sure he'll be thinking that's a pretty good recovery drive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's putting some pressure on Van der Keuvel now, and that's what he's got to do. He's just got to sit there and keep the pressure applied and see what he can do to get through, get past, and pick a position up. Interesting to see some of the chaps, Mark Neutlings in the SimSport Bentley, Cody Pride in the Aston Martin. They've done their pit stops. They're clear now to go to the end of the race if they wish. And as we discussed earlier, Mark Neutlings in the Bentley, he's in prime position now. He will make it to the end of the race if he's filled up with fuel. He's good to go. So that could be we could see him jump up the order as the pit stops come in later on.
Yeah, actually, momentarily, even the last 10 minutes, forgot about the pit stops, to be honest. The racing is so close, I wasn't expecting strategy to come into play, but it was always worth noting, wasn't it, in the at Bathurst, keeping an eye on the drivers who were towards the front of the field, and then decided to take their pit stops early on. And I think we haven't seen Neutlings for a very long time, since right at the beginning of the race, so maybe he came in for a very early pit stop, and he's now just trying to put in flying lap times. In fact, here he is. He's actually a driver we have seen on the podcast a couple of times, but only because he's being lapped. So maybe not the most flying lap times he's putting in there. And to be honest, if there is rather harsh track conditions for the tyres, and he hasn't changed his tyres, well, it is regardless actually whether he's changed his tyres or not. He's still going to have to go for about an hour or more on the same set of tyres, where some people could maybe box halfway through and get a new set of tyres on and then set some good lap times yet again.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just seen Vivort and Vidago battling, but Vidago's struggling, I think, to hang on to the back of the cars. And Rich Smith, after getting that overtake in the Honda earlier on, he's up the road through, more or less sort of nearly a second up the road, 7/10. He's trying to stretch a gap there in 7th place. So battling throughout the field. They are starting to spread out. As I'm looking for the battles on the relative times, they are spreading out a little bit. The gaps are sort of, when I say spreading out, they're about half a second to a second, which is what you're seeing. But this one here is about the closest we've got on the track, and it's all of a couple of tenths. And I don't think you need to tell you the time difference. You can see it there as Zimmerman looks to get the Bentley on a wider line in, which will give him a tighter exit, let him get the hammer down, and maybe get the drive on that Lexus in front on Van der Kerkelt and see what he can do down the straight. But I don't think he is close enough. I think Kerkelt's going to be able to defend this one into the braking zone and keep the position.
Well, it looked like he was almost going for a cutback action, wasn't it? But I don't think he really got the front nose turned in quite enough to get the power down straight enough for the car either. So it is still the Lexus ahead. And Van der Kerkelt, I mean, well, he clearly had good pace at Bathurst, because he ended up winning, and by quite some margin in the end, about 9 seconds. Speaking of winning by 9 seconds, Macaulay is leading by about 9.5 seconds, so a similar margin than what we saw in the first race by Kerkelt in the end. Obviously, it's super gutting, isn't it, Steve, that we've lost Boothby yet again. We thought we were going to have maybe a bit of a showdown between himself and Macaulay, and after the first server, obviously we had that first race start, it looked like it was going to be Boothby's day finally, but it's not to be the way. And if anything, they almost chose Mazzano because it favoured not only him, but a lot of their other drivers so heavily.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's always a shame when any driver disconnects. As we've seen, Zimmerman now he's got the inside line for this next corner. Looks like he's going to be able to get the job done here, as long as he can get the drive out of the corner and avoid Kerkelt managing to put it up the inside for the next one. But he's done that. He's got the drive. He's even got a bit of a gap now, and he's got some safety into the next braking zone as they power out now onto what is the back straight with a couple of slight rights. They're pretty much flat out. You hammer down through the first one, then when you come into the final right, you're sort of more or less just lifting, and as I said earlier, you're balancing the throttle and balancing the brake almost as you come into a heavy braking zone for a very tight right. So just round this one here now, it's just a case of a little bit of a lift and getting ready to bring it down to what is second gear, first gear, in most cars second gear through there, and then away you go again. But Zimmerman's got that position now, and he's going to stretch away from Kerkelt. I think by the looks of this, he's passed him less than half a lap ago, and he's already got more or less half a second on him.
The challenge now really is Zimmerman catch up to Mitchell. How big is the gap? We're about to see 2.7 seconds. I don't think Kerkelt realistically has too many ambitions on trying to catch back up with Zimmerman unless he starts fighting with Mitchell. But we have got 51 minutes to go, and if Zimmerman continues the sort of pace that he's been showing here to catch up to Kerkelt and then obviously get past him, we potentially could see this fight brewing up for the second place within the next 20 minutes or so. That's a complete guess, to be honest, but I think we will still see that battle eventually happen. Speaking of battles, this is Vivort and Vidago. Try saying that 5 times quickly. It's definitely going to be heating up, though, in a couple of minutes, and the Ferrari really trying to push on towards the Lamborghini. Half a second did it at the moment. Rich Smith has really pulled away from these drivers in the Honda, and then you got a little bit of a gap, haven't you, between the next couple of drivers. 3 McLarens in the top 6. A good track for the McLarens, clearly. The Porsche is struggling just a touch. So realistically, it looks like a quick track for McLarens and Bentleys here, Mazzano.
Yeah, absolutely. It's they're blasting around at the moment, and we're just seeing Vidago still struggling to hang on to that Lamborghini in front of him in his Ferrari, but he's giving it his best shot. He's trying, and certainly Vidago having a better race than he had last week. I think we saw him hit the wall at Bathurst multiple times, and even facing the wrong way a few times as well. I think that was a race for Kieran to forget. But as you say, Macaulay, he's doing what he needs to do this week. He's really stretched his legs, got the lead. He's got a lead of 11.2 seconds. That is he's on a different racetrack. That's a massive lead after 16 laps of racing. That is fantastic. Regan Mitchell holding a second place, but I think Zimmerman is going to have the legs on Mitchell. Their last lap, Zimmerman was 2/10 faster than Mitchell, and fastest laps, there is 6/10 between them on their personal bests in this race session. But yeah, he's closing him down at a couple of tenths or so each lap now, so he's going to close that gap eventually. It's a matter of time. But let's not forget about the pit stops. It's going to be interesting. We've had some of the guys obviously who've had issues at the early stages of the race. Maybe have had an issue and they're further down the field than they thought they would be, so they've taken the opportunity to potentially pit and maybe come out into some clear air so they can just hot lap and negate the fact of traffic when you pit. But it'll be interesting to see when these top guys start to pit, which I would expect maybe in another 10-15 minutes we might start to see a few more people pit, and then see where the likes of Cody Pride, Mark Neutlings, where they come back into it. They're currently, Cody Pride in 22nd place is the highest placed driver that has completed his mandatory pit stop. So Cody, I think, will be close to, well, when he pitted, I think he'll have been close to being able to get to the end of the race. He may have to do some fuel managing, not quite sure, but yeah, it's interesting to see where he comes out.
We estimated, didn't we, that half an hour into this race is about the time when we thought maybe we start seeing the drivers start to pit in. So we are about to hit that mark with 48 minutes to go. When it hits 45 minutes to go, expect that sort of, hopefully drivers come in, we'll start seeing where they maybe fall back into order. Speckling here, and Spenkelink, sorry, I always say it wrong, in 15th position, with Solicino in 16th, which is another name that I thoroughly enjoy saying. Tell you what, this is a nice little battle for the Porsche here, isn't it? And actually, well, it's a nice little battle full stop with these drivers, making it look very good with the headlights flashing as well. And you're right, you just look like they definitely do leg day, don't they? Because these Porsches just squat nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they are. I wondered where you were going with that one, to be fair. But yeah, they are. They are a good car out the corners on the twisty tracks. The thing I always find with the Porsches, though, it does. It's all based. A lot of it's on ride height for getting the car turned in and getting that rotation on the car. But you've got to be very careful because the curbs can unsettle the Porsche quite a lot. And some of the tracks, if you ride the curbs too much, it does feel like the car wants to kill you at every corner, and just the back end wants to swap positions with the front. But these guys are making it look very, very easy, and we're halfway up the order, more or less, around about 15th and 16th place. So battling away, lights being flashed now, trying to distract Spenkelink, but he's a wily foxy Spenkelink. He's used to soaking up pressure. As I say, I've commentated and streamed him on some of his community races, and he knows how to soak up pressure, and he can be a very, very consistent driver. We saw him have that incident early on that really wasn't any fault of his own. He got a little bit of contact. I think it was from Cody Pride. As we see Simon Wilkes in 11th place, SimSport Racing driver, with a drive-through penalty. Now I'm guessing that will be for track limits, so that means that he has exceeded the track limits on 4 occasions. You get 3 warnings, and on the 4th one you will get a drive-through, which you will have 3 laps to serve that drive-through. Yeah, Simon Wilkes exploring the boundaries of the track one too many times.
Yeah, that's good for Simon, it has to be said. And to be fair, I was actually looking at the times with him, and Martin Pilkington was a 10th of a second behind him at one point, but not to be. But hello, Zimmerman, right up to the back of Ryan Mitchell. And that didn't take too long at all, did it? I think I said that we'd probably see it in 20 minutes. Well, it's been 6 minutes, and Zimmerman's not hanging around. He's caught a massive amount of time on Mitchell. Well in the slipstream now. This battle is going to be heating up. All of a sudden, the Bentley's got another McLaren to try and get past. But it looks like it may well be short work, won't it? Because unless Mitchell can really defend within an inch of his life, he's got 45 minutes to hold on to this second place. Maybe he'd be better served trying to dive into the pits.
Absolutely, Jack, and the interesting thing is, Zimmerman was over a second, he was 1.1 seconds faster on the previous lap to Mitchell. This time it's looking like, I'm just waiting for it to update for me, and this time he was only 0.3 faster, so I think Mitchell maybe made a mistake. But Macaulay on not this last lap, last lap but one, he had an issue because he was a second off his pace normally. He's back on pace now, but I'm just wondering if there are a few back markers that have been coming into play for these guys, because both on the last lap, both the front two guys were a second down on their sort of normal running time. There was only Zimmerman that put in a pretty standard lap, so he's gained all the advantage on Mitchell at this point. So Regan's going to be under real pressure now. Again, Regan is a very experienced driver. I don't think he's got the speed of Zimmerman, obviously not. Zimmerman's caught him, but it'll be how easy that Bentley can get past the McLaren of Mitchell, and we're going to see now what the Bentley power can do down the back straight. I think the gap's big enough for Mitchell to defend this time, but he's going to come under some very close scrutiny in the braking zone, I feel.
It's not a particularly long back straight here, is it? None of the straights are particularly massive. It's just all about how to cap. Oh my! Okay then. Mitchell going for a dive underneath the track, deciding that he probably wanted to stay on it rather than go under it. Probably always the best way. But it's Zimmerman. He's really pushing the car, isn't he? How much life is he taking out of these tyres? That's my sort of biggest question. He's obviously in the highest engine map as well, so will he have to put more fuel in the car when he comes in? You mentioned at the beginning in qualifying, Steve, that the Bentley can go pretty much all race, although you have to have a mandatory pit stop. But if there wasn't a mandatory pit stop, the Bentley probably would be the car to beat, because it wouldn't have to stop if you manage the fuel correctly. So how much is he really pushing this car? How much is he wanting these track positions, and will it hurt him in the pit stops?
He's pushing hard. He's pushing very hard because his lap times don't lie. He's, there's very few of the guys in the 33s, and the only guys that have been in the 33s realistically are the top 4-5 guys, and that's on their best laps. They're now all lapping in the low 34s. Having said that, Zimmerman when he was chasing Regan Mitchell, he was lapping in the low 33s, so he's definitely pushing hard. He's definitely trying to catch Mitchell, and he's definitely trying to gain track position. How much life is he taking out of his tyres? I'm not sure, because the temperatures are low. There's various factors to take into it. As we said at the top of the show, I'm not quite sure how hard this track is on tyres. A lot of fast corners, a lot of fast right-handers, so it might be that some of the heat going through those tyres, the tyre cycle, it may be detrimental to them. The braking zones, a couple of very heavy braking zones, again putting heat through the brakes into the tyres as well. Not quite sure. It's going to be interesting, and as he dives into the pits, so let's see. I'm wondering though, will he take tyres? I mean, if he takes tyres, then potentially that's going to extend his stop up to around about 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's. I think it was a probably wise move if he didn't think that he was going to get past Mitchell anytime soon. Obviously, maybe he comes into the pits, bolts some new tyres on potentially, but the most important thing is that he comes out in clean air and starts putting some fast lap times back under his belt, because he probably got slowed up by about half a second a lap just trying to follow the McLaren, and we'll see where he comes out. Simon Wilkes has done his penalty. He's all the way down in 20th place now. You can see he's still got a pit stop to go, though, a little 1 next to his number, and next to his time as well. So Simon Wilkes will have to come in, even though he's already been in. But you're starting to see a few other drivers, Marcel V, Zimmerman obviously in the pit. So we're looking forward to seeing how these drivers sort of blend back in. Apologies, I got the hiccups, especially Zimmerman.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see where Zimmerman comes out, and just to get a look on that. But it looks like he's just exiting the pits now. So it's been a relatively long stop. Not quite sure if it was long enough for tyres, but it's certainly been a relatively long stop, and he's just exiting. So he's showing us 15th at the moment, but I think he's going to drop down the order further. The timings do take a few seconds to update, but Zimmerman back on track, and he's now cleared to race until the checkered flag, so it'll be interesting. He's now showing sort of 17th, 18th, dropping down the order a little bit. So 18th place, he's the highest car, obviously, that has cleared his pit stop. So he will now have to get the hammer down, get some clean laps. He's got no one directly in front of him. He needs to hot lap to actually do the undercut on Regan Mitchell. But what will be interesting will be to see if Mitchell decides to respond. Will he pit? Does he want to respond, get a quick pit stop done, get back out before Zimmerman can really make that undercut work?
Yeah, and he's got an orange, I think that's an orange Honda behind him. that's not for track position either. So it's not like he's got the pressure of a driver directly behind him. In fact, he's got about 6 seconds back to the Lexus of Van der Kelt. And so, yeah, it's whether or not Mitchell will respond. But Zimmerman is quite clearly our highest placed pitted driver. And with 6 seconds in the lead, 6 seconds ahead of him, he has got that clean air that he was probably hoping and looking for. Obviously, it's always slightly easier to chase someone, though, so it's still going to be really rather interesting. Valen Duke, I think he had a drive-through penalty at the beginning of this race, didn't he? Although I'm not sure if that was the first start or the second restart. Well, he's still running well in 15th position here, the SRHI driver. And I'm guessing we're focusing on because Cohen's Scepter is coming to give.
Absolutely, yep, absolutely. He's getting a little bit of support from chat, and as I promised, if you let me know who you're supporting and I spot it, if we've got no mega close battles on track, I will give them some airtime. Let's cheer them on together. So just type in chat, let me know who you would like to see out on track.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be inundated now with requests, but we'll try and get through them as quickly as we can. Mitchell, we were mentioning him and obviously Zimmerman quite a lot, but Macaulay has pulled out 14 seconds gap now. So realistically, it's almost getting to the point where the sort of difference between Macaulay taking tyres, if Macaulay decides to take tyres in the pit and Mitchell doesn't, I think Macaulay will still come out in the provisional race lead, won't he? And he'll have new tyres on. So it's really going all his way. The last thing he needs, though, is a George Boothby-esque incident, maybe getting a flat spot with his tyres all of a sudden out of nowhere.
Please, no commentators' curses, Jack. Just
I'm touching wood, don't worry, and spin over the shoulder, all that sort of thing. So fingers crossed for you, Macaulay. We don't, or any driver, to be honest, that we don't see that sort of shenanigans. Hedges and Martin Pilkington actually is the driver ahead of him, isn't he? The Porsche behind him is not Spenkling. I'm not sure who that Porsche driver is behind him. I don't think that is Spenkling, although I could be wrong. He's 2 seconds behind apparently, so I'm not sure actually who that is.
That's maybe someone that's been lapped potentially then. But yeah, could be. Hedge is doing a good job in the Porsche, as we said. Interesting to see that the Porsches are more or less together on track. Just outlining their sort of natural pace, as it were, and their ceiling of performance in said driver's hands. So it's interesting to see, as we're looking now at Van der Kelt in third place, still needs to make his pit stop. So Joe Macaulay, Regan, Mitchell, Kelt is the top three. None of them have pitted yet, as we see in Marquette, is it? Marquette in the pits, dropping down through the order as we speak, but he's getting that pit stop away. And Marcel, one of our favourites in the BMW, has a drive-through. That again must be for track limits. So Marcel admiring the scenery one too many times and gaining himself a drive-through penalty. So that effectively gives him almost 2 pit stops in the race.
Does indeed, and obviously we're speaking, this is obviously the Clash of the Communities. We're just over halfway through this race, I believe, so probably worth, if you are tuning in, to give you a brief update on what on earth is going on. This is the Clash of the Communities between SimSport, SRHI and PPR Racing. There is a 4-round championship based on, the main championship is based on the community points. We were at Bathurst last time out. It was a spectacular race. Go check it out on SimSport Racing's YouTube channel. We're here at Mazzano for round number 2. All the races are 75 minutes. And next time out, we'll just cast our minds to the next round 3. Steve, you'll be racing in it, and it's at Donington Park. Are you very pleased that it's Donington that you're going to?
All I'm going to say is I need to get my track medals before I can get on. I've not even turned a lap. I've not turned a lap at Donington, and Donington is one of my favourite circuits. It's lots of memories for me as a child visiting Donington Park to watch motorcycle racing. And just to give you an indication of how old I am, that's when the 500cc 2-stroke GP bikes were still racing. I used to go watch those boys, and that's when men were men, and they didn't really care for much else other than going fast on a 2-stroke rocket. But yeah, a lot of memories at Donington. Donington. I do like the track. It's a difficult track to overtake at. I think it's a very fast-flowing track. It's a rewarding track to drive. I have driven it in lots of sims, just not ACC, because I've not had time since the DLC came out just a few weeks ago. But I am looking forward to racing there. Not quite sure what you're going to see. I think I'll be one of the guys getting laps at the back. Because since I started commentating and broadcasting, I don't get an awful lot of time for racing. But I'll give it my best shot. I'll enjoy it, and I'll be out there to try and take the checkered flag wherever I finish.
Well, are you telling me then, Steve, after you won the British GT DLC on my competition, that you haven't yet turned a single lap on the DLC?
I have done some laps at Alton Park.
Well, at least
I've done some laps at Alton Park, and I've done some laps at Alton Park.
Crikey, mate. Well, fair enough. I'm sure Donington, well, as you were saying, Donington is a spectacular track. And if I knew anything about bikes, then I'm sure you would have been showing your age. But to be honest, you could have gone to Donington and seen them yesterday, and I wouldn't know the difference.
Well, anybody in chat that can remember the 500cc era of motorcycles, just drop in who was your favourite rider from the time. I'll start her for 10, and Kevin Schwantz was one of my favourites, one of the Texan. Crazy guy, but really, really quick on a bike. But yeah, in chat, if you remember the 500cc bikes, just drop it in the chat. Who was your favourite rider?
I'm going to go for Valentino Rossi. No, I'm joking. As I said, I don't know anything about bikes, which is unfortunately probably a big gap in my motorsport knowledge, unfortunately, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, very much looking forward to that. And if anybody's wondering what the final round here is, the Clash of the Communities, it is Kyle Army, isn't it, Steve? And again, another one of these tracks, a little like Mazzano, to be honest. It's not typically on most calendars. Is this a battle for track position? Actually,
it is indeed.
It's not Marcel V in the BMW, was it? It was Zailovic, who hasn't yet come into the pits. And I tell you what, these drivers are probably fighting for each other. That's Junior and Van der Kekelt. So Van der Kekelt is actually in the Lexus, who's just carved their way through. So these two drivers were currently out on our screen now. Junior and Zailovic is actually getting lapped by Kekelt. That's why it was such an odd sort of transaction of places there. I was wondering what was going on. But this is Zimmerman.
Yeah, let's see how this pans out, because Regan Mitchell, I believe, has pitted. So it's going to be interesting to see where Mitchell is. Obviously, the timing tower will take some time to settle down. And indeed, there we go, big jump. Still currently showing Regan Mitchell as in front of Zimmerman. Yeah,
but by how much? ACC likes to keep it hidden from us until we hit the next sector of track. So as we turn,
I'm going to guess at about 2 seconds.
6 seconds.
Yep, I'm going to say I'm going to look at about 2 seconds. The broadcast app just gives me a little bit more of an up-to-date time. But yeah, he's around about 2 seconds up the road. I'm cheating, mate. Absolutely, always.
Oh dear. Well, you're about right, aren't you? Because Zimmerman is now 2.6 seconds ahead, and as the timing tower ticks, is 1.8. So I'm actually going to class that you didn't get that one right.
Our race leader Macaulay is in the pits as well now, dropping through the order down to 5th place, still currently in the pits. So let's just see. I mean, he had a massive lead. Last time we checked, it was round about 13-14 seconds, and maybe a little bit more. But he's dropping down. It'd be interesting to see where he is in relation to Mitchell, who should technically be running second on the road once the pit stops shake themselves out. I think Zimmerman is going to be closing down, though. He's got him in his sights, as we can see there. So he's basically the gap is visual, and that as a driver, Jack, you know that makes it easier. Once that gap's visual, it gives you something to aim for, doesn't it?
Oh, I mean, chasing is probably the easiest part of racing, I would say, in terms of you just focus on the driver ahead. And all of a sudden, everything you've been trying to do in terms of braking zone, apex, minimum speed, I don't know if it's just me, it suddenly becomes a lot more easy because you're just focusing on that drive, and you just sort of, everything flows together rather than overly concentrating on when you should be braking, how much speed you should be turning in with, what the angle of attack, weight transfer and everything like that. And for me, as soon as you get that visual, like you say, all of a sudden everything just starts flowing, and that's exactly what we're seeing from Zimmerman now. And did he take tyres? We're suspecting potentially Zimmerman ended up taking tyres. The way that Mitchell's going, unless he has taken tyres and they just haven't heated back up, it looks like he's losing quite a lot of time. He's lost about 1.5 seconds, potentially 2 seconds, just in the 2 laps we've been watching here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does take time for heat to come back through the tyres, and again, the temperature has dropped to 10 degrees now, so we've lost another degree of track temperature as the server time reaches 9:42 p.m. So we're getting into the darkness of the night. As you can see, the lights taking effect. Track temperature, as I said, down to 10 degrees. There is no wind, so as Regan Mitchell very, very wide there, and that's going to give Zimmerman the run over the start-finish line. And it looks like there's connection issues maybe again at the moment, although yeah, Regan Mitchell has lost that position, so I think he did make a mistake, and he's running a little bit wide and given that position up. To be fair, I think I think it was only going to be a matter of time anyway, but Zimmerman's got that place probably a lot easier than he thought he was going to get it.
Yeah, and that'd be really good for Mitchell, wasn't it? Because obviously he was putting up a pretty good defence before the pit stops, and he was hoping to try and replicate such a thing after the pit stops. Speaking of pit stops, though, Van der Kekelt is actually leading this one now. He's the obviously hasn't taken any pits, so all of a sudden now we're starting to see a disparity between the drivers who have pitted, i.e. Macaulay, and Van der Kekelt, who is in the lead of this race, but will provisionally probably drop back to about 4th.
Yeah, and what is interesting, to be fair, you know, I mean, when even though there's a difference in this respect of pit stops, as we see Pilkington coming into the pits now to take it, and Hedges indeed, so they're both going in and basically getting out of the way. But what I was going to say is that the guys that haven't pitted, they're still entitled to race. The guys that have, even though they're probably out of position due to pit stops, because at that time they're racing for position. So it's you know, dare I say, tactics could come into play.
Well, I think, as me and David found out last time out, the tactics are nearly impossible to follow, really, because it's a bit of an in-between race. 75 minutes. Some would argue that a 4-hour race isn't an endurance race necessarily, compared to the likes of the 24 hours or the 12 hours or X, Y, Z. But at 75 minutes, probably to a lot of these drivers who are sort of very used to endurance events, especially on ACC, you get plenty of endurance events on ACC, considering it is a GT sim. They're probably arguing that maybe 75 minutes is almost bordering on a sprint. So their tactics seem very different to sort of the endurance format that they're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing how the sim world has developed over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Realistically, I mean, you know, endurance races used to be for certain sims, but now there seems to be just a handful of sims that handle it well, and everywhere you look there are 12 hours and even 24-hour sim races going on. So I think you know, the challenges are out there if that's your thing, but 75 minutes, it's still a long time.
It definitely is a long time. I mean, I can't do 75 seconds without spinning on ACC, so and the fact that these guys are doing 75 minutes is pretty good going. Well, what we got on our screens at the moment, that's on board with Marquez, who's going past Simon Wilkes. That was a good little move there. That was track position as well, but Wilkes hasn't yet taken his pit stop. He has been in the pits, but that was for a drive-through penalty, which really scuppered his race quite early on. And this is actually a battle for top 10 positions, isn't it? Again, De Bon, who was actually, I think, leading Bathurst for an awfully long time, because he just flat out refused to come into the pits until I think the penultimate lap. And then he came into the pits, and to be fair, came out about 7th place, so it's still a big improvement. His tactic worked well. But by the looks of it, it's not going to be happening quite the same way this time round at Mazzano, as Marquez now looks to the outside, brakes hard on the outside curb, tries to dip it in to get the cutback, but actually De Bon shielding that off well. And you could argue, yes, Steve, they are fighting for track position, like you said before. Technically, this is for track position, but it's not really. Oh my days! A huge defensive manoeuvre by De Bon, and Marquez did very well to not go in the backside of him.
Yeah, absolutely great evasive driving there and aggressive defensive driving. Yeah, they are racing. Technically, they're racing for position. I know some drivers frown upon it and say, well, realistically, I'm not racing you. And you could argue that basically De Bon is slowing himself down by defending, and he would do far better just to let him pass. But it's his prerogative, it's his decision, and he is choosing to race how he wants to, and he's making it very, very hard to for the guys to overtake him.
Yeah, indeed. It's like a GT4 not getting out of the way of the GT3 at this rate, but it's a lot more fair game, isn't it? Because, as you said, they are technically not doing anything wrong, is De Bon, as he is his prerogative to defend as much as he would like. Chris Hill has jumped into the chat saying that apparently there's a 4-hour endurance event at Monza hosted by SRHI with 39 drivers signed up. So Well, this is the SRHI TV YouTube. Might as well plug it if they want it.
Absolutely, mate, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, are you still looking for any GT4 sign-ups, or is it too late at this point? I know I did get a message last week reference GT4 cars could do with a few more on the grid, so it'd be good to know, Chris, if we do need any more. It will be streamed live on Saturday afternoon. I believe, if memory serves me correctly, we're qualifying from 1 o'clock, and SimSport Solutions is bringing you that live commentary. Chris has just replied that they are now full, so that's good to know. We've got a full complement of cars. You can watch the whole event live for Saturday afternoon, so if you've got nothing else planned, please join us. If you're watching this on the SRHI YouTube channel and you don't currently subscribe, please subscribe and also click that notification bell so you don't miss any more of their fantastic streams. And if you're liking the video, just hit that thumbs up for us and give us a like and drop us comments. Just let us know what you're thinking to the stream this evening.
GT4's apparently cancelled that evening as well. We'll go have a little bit of chat about that in a second. But Marquez with an absolutely superb overtake. We saw it on the stream. It would be unfair not to call it out, because into the first corner, around the outside of De Bon, you don't get much better than that. A fantastic move by the McLaren here. So well done, Marquez. And Chris Hill, that's absolutely good that the GT4 is cancelled. But it'd be interesting. I mean, obviously, I'm not that familiar with the communities apart from SimSport and yourself, Steve. I'm guessing Chris Hill is a major part of the sim racing, the SRHI.
Yes, some would argue he is SRHI, some would argue he's along for the ride, some would argue he's the main man, and some would argue he probably doesn't do enough. But he's a great guy, he's Chris, and joking apart, Chris is one of the admin here, and fantastic guy, leading a fantastic community. They didn't get enough sign-ups for the GT4s, which is really sad, because the GT4s are a fantastic class to race, and the multi-class racing does get interesting, to say the least. It throws out a new challenge for GT3 and GT4 drivers to avoid each other. The issue of traffic in multi-class racing is very interesting. But I'm sure we'll have some good racing going forward. And Chris Hill has just put many question marks, and then he's dared to mention money.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope I'm still getting paid here, Steve. You can take that pay cut for that comment. No, it's I mean, that's good actually, because GT4 is actually the class I prefer to drive. I think GT3, I mean, I race a GT4 car in real life in the Ginetta G55, but the GT3s on the sim, I mean, I'm not very good on the sim as it stands, but it's just a little bit too quick for me, to be honest, a little bit too aggressive. Whereas the GT4 is sort of more my pace, so that's gutting that we're not seeing a full complement of GT4s on that grid as well. But it'll also be really interesting. What I was going to go on to say is it'd be nice to have Chris Hill maybe jump into the Discord and have a little 5-minute chat before we get into the last 15 minutes of this race. You know, get another member of the community rather than a SimSport race is always going on about the red branded cars.
Absolutely, yeah, good shout there. I mean, Chris, I'm sure he's more than welcome to jump in the Discord and have a chat with us and let us know his thoughts on the race, and we can, just maybe shout out those SRH cars a little bit more. Aaron just mentioning that SRHI will host a 24-hour race. Yes, towards the end of the year, I think it's November time, there is a 24-hour, and also there's a 12-hour in between somewhere as well. So SRHI is the place to come and have a go at some serious endurance racing if you want to kill a few hours, shall we say, as they are hosting, starting off this Saturday with a 4-hour race, then we've got a 6-hour race, and we've got 8 hours I think, and then we've got 12 and a 24 I think. I'm going off memory, so sorry Chris if I've got that wrong, but you have got a full calendar of endurance racing for 2021. And Chris, no, you're not shy, mate. You need to come and jump in and put the world to rights with us.
Yeah, been called out now, Chris. There's no hanging it back, is there? But yeah, brilliant. I mean, as I said, SRHI, not necessarily a community that I'm that familiar with, but by the sounds of it, they're making big moves and waves in endurance racing, and they've got some fantastic drivers. And not only that, I'm sure the likes of the SSR and the PPR drivers will probably be getting involved with those kind of events as well. So it'd be awesome to see basically everybody we've got here tonight jumping onto a almost a proper endurance event, more than 75 minutes, like a 4 hours, 8 hours sort of stream with teammates and everything. It'd be really cool to see. But I have to say, actually, the top 3 at the moment is making quite good reading for PPR, isn't it? Kekel's Banfield of a vault. Might not stay that way, due to the fact that obviously they have to jump into the pits. But focusing now back onto the final 20 minutes of this race, we do still have Macaulay, who's the top driver out of the drivers that have come into the pits. Zimmerman up to second place and has pulled a 1.9 second gap from Ryan Mitchell. Now, you got a bit more information than me, Steve. What is Macaulay and Zimmerman's times in comparison to each other?
Sorry, I was just trying to move Chris into our Discord chat, but we haven't got the authority to move him into the chat. So, Chris, if you can't jump into the broadcast, unfortunately, we can't move you either. So that's an oversight, and we need to get that sorted. So, apologies, Chris. We've called you out, and just for everyone watching on the stream, Chris has come to the interview, and he's in. Chris is here. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, gentlemen.
How are you doing, buddy?
I'm not too bad, thank you very much.
And your thoughts this evening on the racing?
I think it's been very close. I'm very proud to watch some of our racers do so well. We've had a few unfortunate incidents. The loss of George at the start of the race was unfortunate, but that's SRHI for you. We are unlucky.
No, it's always unlucky to see a driver sort of disconnect. It's about the worst thing that can happen to anybody, obviously, in these races. But we've just seen Zimmerman there putting the moves on James Warren, and I say he's got that move done, but he just ran a little bit wide, and Warren's managed to get back up the inside, but he's on the outside for turn 4, I think that is, and that's put the place back into Zimmerman's hands, and Warren under pressure from Regan Mitchell. And that is interesting, Jack, that Regan Mitchell is still hanging on to the back of Zimmerman, because we thought Zimmerman had lots more pace than Mitchell, but Mitchell's managed to hang on, and he's managed to dispense James Warren a lot quicker than Zimmerman did.
Yeah, apologies, Chris, for bringing you in and all of a sudden ignoring you for the next 2 minutes. But I mean, sometimes when action like this appears, you have to try and cover it, don't you? I mean, Zimmerman was struggling to get past Warren, and it was another one of those battles, isn't it? Like, do you defend? Is it sort of morally right to defend? Is it a bit of a grey area? And then all of a sudden, Zimmerman gets backed up to Mitchell. Now, what we have seen is Zimmerman really pull away from Mitchell before. We'll likely see it again, but it could have ended in disaster. And to be honest, Chris, because we'll bring you into the conversation, what's your opinion on that? A driver who hasn't pitted against a driver who has pitted and is faster. What do you think the drivers should do?
It's all fair game, isn't it? It's all about the tactics of the individual driver. Some will go long, some will pit early. You can't argue with that. Any of them, what they're doing.
Brilliant. Well, a lack of team orders. That's what we like to hear.
Well, we've got Joe Macaulay now up behind Sem in the Porsche, and he's going to dispense with him. It doesn't look like Spain Clink's going to put too much of a defence up to that. He realises obviously Joe is totally on a different strategy, and he is effectively still the race leader as Joe, as we would expect. 14 seconds clear of Van der Kekel. Make that 15 really for round figures, because it's 14.9, so 15 seconds up the road, his race to lose, and just 4 cars in front of them that still have to pit. Couple more further down the order. James Warren in 9th still hasn't pitted, and De Bon in 12th hasn't pitted. Azalovic in 21st still needs to pit. So there's a handful of guys just really stretching it out with only 16 minutes left to go of this race. We're just going to see, I think we'll see Joe Macaulay back up on top of the stack very, very soon. Kekel will be sat effectively in 2nd, Zimmerman 3rd, and Mitchell will be just off the podium in 4th. So it's been some good close racing, but tactically I don't think it's been as dramatic as Bathurst was last week, Jack.
It probably hasn't, no, but Van der Kekel's moving up those many places, getting ahead of Zimmerman and Mitchell. Obviously probably didn't take tyres. That's a pretty big move by him, but I mean, to be honest, we'll jump back to the racing in a couple of minutes. Everything's calmed down just a touch. Chris, I wanted to know a little bit more about what the plans are for SRHI, because Steve rattled off a few sort of dates and a few events and everything like that, but this is a YouTube channel. Let's inform people of what's cracking with SRHI. What is the plan for 2021 for you guys?
Oh, we started off our GT3 season on, I think it was the 2nd February. Tuesday night racing is our main thing. The following week we have a GT4 race, and interspersed between the sprint races and throughout the year we have a 2021 Endurance Championship season, which you think I'd be really prepared for and tell you exactly which races there were, wouldn't you? So we start off at Monza on Saturday, 2 o'clock race start time UK time, 4-hour race. Then on the 24th of April we have round 2 at Kyalami. I mean, stop me if there's any interesting action going on the track.
No, crack on. We're here to learn about this.
Round 3 we are at Bathurst on the 5th of June. Round 4 Imola, 25th of September. Round 5 we call it the 1,000 kilometres of Paul Ricard, and that's the 6th of November. And we haven't scheduled an actual date yet, but we are planning to do the final round as a 24-hour race at Spa.
It's a full calendar then, really, isn't it? I mean, you're expanding the entirety of 2021 there. It's I'm guessing you've got you have got a fairly sizable community. Obviously, you've got a community following in the chat, let alone everybody who's racing here today. Is there plans to maybe, is it ATC that you're mainly covering on this as well? I'm going with that.
Yes, ACC is our main platform now. We did develop from AC, as most communities did, and we're hoping to at some stage bring in Ultimate Ballista 2, which is still under development, as you're all aware. We do host, well, we don't actually host them, but we do have Discord channels available for Dirt Rally 2, Euro Truck Simulator. So we are quite broad.
A diverse community by the sounds of it, and I will just have to divert away from the conversation, Chris, unfortunately, because Zimmerman and Van der Kerkelt are going wheel to wheel, and they've dragged Mitchell along with them. And Van der Kerkelt looks like he's defending hard here, Steve, but Zimmerman, we've seen them have the pace before. What I'm very much impressed with is Mitchell is still within touching distance, isn't he? He's not giving up the ghost just yet, and we're into the final 12.5 minutes of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering, I mean, Mitchell's trying really hard in the background there as he just gets it a little bit wrong and loses time, but Zimmerman, as he's been most of this race, absolutely inch perfect, and he's now round the outside in T1, which potentially gives him the inside to turn 2, but he doesn't quite get it. Van der Kerkelt defended very hard, so hard in fact that's got Mitchell back onto the back of Zimmerman, and they're really pushing each other. And these three, let's not forget, in reality are fighting for what would be, I would imagine, well, I'm stopping talking. Yeah, that's better. Kieran Verdago just shuffles down the order. He was showing ahead of these, but these three are battling for second, third, and fourth spot at the moment. And I would say that Van der Kerkelt, he's got there by not taking tyres, and at this moment in time, I think Mitchell and Zimmerman have taken tyres, and Van der Kerkelt is now paying the price.
He is indeed, and I tell you what, Chris, we'll say good night, and you can go back to lighting up the timing chat as Zimmerman was trying to light up the stream with a move around the outside of Van der Kerkelt, but Kerkelt yet again keeping his position, and Mitchell really swaying there. And just while there's a small break in the action, Chris, we'll say goodbye.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Cheers, Chris.
And
thanks, mate.
Enjoy the rest of the stream.
Thank you, mate. Speak to you soon. Yeah, Zimmerman just putting lots of pressure on Van der Kerkelt as we speak, and as we can see on the cameras, he's really tucked up behind and really in the braking zone there. There's not a lot of room left to see as he draws almost alongside. Kerkelt going very defensive now into turn 1, and is that going to give Zimmerman the advantage? Bit of contact there. If Regan Mitchell plays his cards right, he could be collecting 2 places if these two trip over each other, because Zimmerman is really now starting to push hard, and the harder he pushes, the harder Kerkelt defends. Well, he's going to have to stay within touching distance, isn't he, Mitchell? I don't think he's got the out-and-out pace to maybe beat these guys out on track. Maybe Kerkelt if he's suffering with tyres, but he's going to have to stay within touching distance, because you're right, if he plays his cards right, there could well be
a bit of an incident, and that is the last thing that either of these drivers need after what was a bit of a strong race. Zimmerman's up the inside, though. Is this going to be the place handed to him? I think it's going to be. Kerkelt is going to potentially lose out to the McLaren as well, who gets a better run out the corner. In fact, no, he doesn't. Kerkelt keeps it, but it is Zimmerman in potentially provisional second place. No one's catching Macaulay. That's a fact, I think, unless Macaulay has an incident. But Kerkelt is dropped back into provisional third, and now all of a sudden the fight we're going to be focusing on is this one with him and Mitchell, and I think we're pretty much going to wave goodbye to Zimmerman.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Zimmerman's up the road now. He's going to go. He's got that clean air. He was a lot faster than Kerkelt. It was just through the ambitious and great defending of Kerkelt that he managed to hold him back for so long. Now it'll be a fact of how much quicker is Mitchell, because I think he is faster than Kerkelt. He's obviously caught him and he's hanging in there. He's putting pressure on him. It'll be a case of, though, can he make the move? Can he get that final step on the podium? He's got just a shade over 9 minutes to do that, so he's going to have to push hard, because 9 minutes it's not long at all. The laps are ticking by, and he's going to have to try and get that move done ASAP to take advantage. Obviously, the fact every lap he does, he's taking a bit more wear out of his tyres and levelling that gap. Just depends how much faster Kerkelt's tyres are dying away, and if that is indeed the problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think Kerkelt had the pace of Zimmerman even when they were both on fresh tyres, did he? But it is interesting. Ryan Mitchell, he hasn't really had the out-and-out pace, has he? Although he's got there after a fantastic sort of race start. It's all about keeping himself there, and he may well be doing one better to go round the Lexus, but it's not quite to be. Just go very close. I thought there was going to be contact there, but should have known better. These drivers are much better than that. It was delightful to have a little chat with Chris, wasn't it? It's a bit of a shame that we didn't do a bit earlier because we kept having to interrupt him as these three drivers started having it out with each other. But it's always nice to hear about the different communities and what they're getting up to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to have an insight of what's going on, and as we keep saying, SRHI, great community, good base, and a very, very broad community, doing lots and lots of stuff, and accepting new members all the time, and looking to get bigger and bigger grids, and the GT3s, GT4s, the endurance racing, that they are packed out grids. We've got splits in the GT3s, GT4s, 2 servers each, so there is a very, very healthy community of racers here. So if you're interested, just look them up on their website. Check out, obviously you're on the YouTube channel, they also have a Twitch channel and a Discord channel, so plenty of ways to join the community and join in the fun and get on track, and we could be streaming you out there battling for the final podium position like we're watching Mitchell and Van der Kerkelt now.
Yeah, indeed. And I have to say, Sam Spenkelink is getting a little bit of grief in the chat, isn't he? Everybody's wondering if he even knows that he has to pit. He's going that long on this strategy. But speaking of going long, he's going a long way round here is Ryan Mitchell. But again, Kerkelt is showing that he's got good racecraft. He knows where to put the car when needs be, doesn't he? And you're right. I mean, we're going on to the final podium positions. That is essentially the fight for third place here. And well, Mitch, I'm sure as an SSR admin, Steve, you're probably quite keen for Mitchell to hurry up and get this job done.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be fair, the boys, and I'm not just talking about SSR, I'm talking about all the guys on track, SRHI, PPR and SSR. They've all put on a good show this evening. There's been some good battling, there's been lots of respect shown, and there's been some very, very close racing as we've drawn breath a couple of times when it almost looked like certain contact in braking zones, but these guys know what they're doing. And as we just seen, that keeps throwing me every time Mitchell, there's still some server issues out there, I think, with connections, but Mitchell is really struggling to get past Kerkelt. I hope he does, obviously, as an SSR supporter, but like I say, 4th place is not a bad result, and as we said right at the top of the show, this is a community championship. Yes, we will have one driver at the top of the table potentially at the end of it all who's maybe won the most races, scored the most points, whatever. But it's all about the community, and it's about how the whole community finishes to score those points and to hopefully see which one brings the trophy home. As we've seen, James Warren from PPR in 16th now has a drive-through for track limits, I'm guessing again, so that's going to put him way down the order. That's a bit of a blow for PPR, currently in 16th, so he's going to drop down, I would imagine, well down the field towards the back end. And we've seen De Bon in 15th now taking his pit stop as well, so he's going to fall down the order. And also the number 17 Lamborghini of a vote, he's now in the pits as well, so he was the race leader, but that is going to give the lead back to Macaulay, with Spenkelink in second, who still needs to do that pit stop.
I tell you what, one driver who has gone long, just come out the pits, is Banfield. And he's actually pipped Kekelt and Mitchell for potentially a podium position. These guys have been falling over each other for so long. Now Banfield is actually looking like he's in that provisional third place now in the McLaren. So that's a fantastic showing by him. By the looks of it, Vavort is now in the pit lane. And here is Banfield in the McLaren. And like I said before, they're showing that the drivers are really sort of pushing it. Vavort is going to fall down the order, wondering where he's going to come out. This will give you an idea of where Sem Spenkelink will come out as well. So keep an eye on Vavort, the number 17 PPR car. But the Banfield showing that the PPR drivers, Macaulay, Banfield, potentially Vavort, Van der Kekelt, are really dominating Misano here tonight, aren't they? And maybe Sim Sport, although they've got a wall of red from about 9th down to 13th place, not going to be scoring quite as much. But again, SRHI not necessarily pulling home all the points. You said it was about consistency. You said it was about the team championship. I don't see a lot of silver around that top 10. Only 2 drivers out of the SRHI crew.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's like I say, it is the community challenge. It's a championship of 4 races as well. So it'll be interesting to see how it changes up at next week's race. But this week's been an absolute stunner. It's been fantastic. I mean, Joe Macaulay, class of his own, all the way from lights out. Would have been interesting to see what Boothby could have done. I think Boothby would have been, for me, don't shoot me, but my opinion is I think Boothby would have been the man to take the top step tonight, and very unlucky to get that disconnect. But I think Macaulay would have been in a closer second place than he's under pressure now. I mean, he's got what, 20 odd seconds was it? I think last time it came up, and that was to Spenkelink, who's in the pit. So it's going to be more to Zimmerman, who's going to jump into second place when he goes past Spenkelink in the pits.
Well, apparently Spenkelink as well. There's something we mentioned right at the beginning of the show, but we've just been reminded right at the end of the show. He shouldn't actually be in red anyway. He's not a SimSport driver. He should be an SRHI driver.
Absolutely.
So there is another silver driver in amongst the top 10. So apologies on that one. That's a server issue, unfortunately, not on our end, and I just momentarily forgot about that one. But you're right. I mean, Macaulay has been pretty much faultless. Zimmerman had one big mistake, and he's been trying to, for the next 73 minutes, have been trying to make up for it so far, and he's achieved his goal. Banfield, followed by Vavort, actually. So, again, showing that Bathurst, the long pit stops was an advantageous one. Again, Banfield and Vavort, they've come out 3rd and 4th. So, whatever it is about the long pit stops, something about them is working. And maybe we'll see a few more drivers trying to take that approach at Donington.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just seen Regan Mitchell there side by side with Van der Kekelt. He was really still trying to put the pressure on and trying to get the job done, but just not quite managing it. These two really taking the battle down with 1 minute 30 seconds left on the clock. Van der Kekelt will be thinking he needs to keep this position, he needs to keep this, get this job done and score those valuable points. Regan Mitchell equally thinking he needs to gain that position, and he is doing everything he can. He's putting lots and lots of pressure on. He's you can see he's carrying so much more corner speed. He's definitely in the grip that he's and through the corners that Mitchell's got the advantage, but in the straight line speed there's nothing to be gained. He goes round the outside into turn 1. Can he make that stick and keep the inside for turn 2? It looks like he might do, as long as he can get it turned and doesn't let Kekelt get back up the inside, and he's going to defend it, he's going to hold it, and it looks like he's got that position done. Great move from Regan Mitchell.
Yeah, it was absolutely cracking, wasn't it? And we've seen that move a couple of times. It's a bit of a last-ditch effort with nothing else. You can't do anything else. Throw it around the outside of turn one and hope it sticks. It certainly stuck for Mitchell there. And it was about time. He's on to the last lap, I believe, of this race. So he needed to get it done, and he needed to get it done quickly. And all of a sudden, you see the gap he's already pulled out on Kekelt there. He's so much faster, but he hasn't been able to do it. And Marquez, actually, I'm sure will be smelling blood just behind. He was actually the first driver we saw throw it around the outside. So we know he can throw some inventive moves out there. We got 22 seconds left on the timer. With Macaulay, I'm not sure where he is out on track. Back there he is. He's about to start one more lap. So we are going to have another lap here at Mazzano to finish it all off, and another opportunity to just compliment Joe Macaulay on what has been a superb race, really doing PPR proud, I'm sure. Zimmerman again doing an equally good job, and well, not just Macaulay giving PPR the props, either Banfield and Vavort as well. Two drivers we haven't really covered at all because we assumed they were going to drop further back down the order after their pit stop, but they just came in. Bit of a splash and dash, no tyres needed, get back out there and keep track position. A really, really good strategy, a good call by those guys.
Yeah, absolutely, but just going back to that Regan Mitchell move, it just goes to show the justification for taking the tyres, because a couple of corners before he pulled that move, I sort of said, look how much speed he was carrying through the corners. He wasn't so much catching just in the braking zones, he was catching through the corner speed. He was able to corner so much faster, and when he went round the outside there, he just had so much more grip, and it was the sort of move he needed to do. He threw the dummy for Kekelt. Kekelt went to defend, Mitchell switched it back to the outside, and before Kekelt could react, he was already down the outside of him, which set him up for the inside on turn 2. Great move, but as I say, it just shows the justification for potentially having that slightly longer pit stop and taking the tyres.
You're not wrong at all. And just having a couple of people
Final
saying
corner.
they want to have a look at Marquez, but we're having a look at the final corner because it looks like Macaulay is going to take the victory here for round number 2 here at Mazzano with a clash of the communities, well deserved, followed by another Bentley in Simon Zimmerman. Vavort and Mitchell, I'm sure, will be hoping to come across the line and keep their 3rd and 4th place. But it's a fair way, it's an old fair way back, isn't it, to Zimmerman? He's going around the final corner now. But that shows how quick Macaulay was and how much further ahead he was than the rest of the field. Marquez is still behind Vander Kekelt. I know you guys want to have a quick look at him, but we'll try and shoot back to him as soon as we see Banfield and Vavort cross the line.
There you go, Marquez in 7th place, currently coming across the line. Great race from him to bring home 7th place for SRHI. Solid result. So Kieran Verdago bringing it home for SimSport in 9th. Where did Sem end up? Sem bringing it home in 10th place, and as I said right at the beginning, Sem he got punted out. If you remember, he lost a lot of positions, but the one thing Sem will do is keep going. He will keep trying. As we've seen Cody Pride doing some donuts, he's finished already, so that is pretty much the end of the race as Aaron Martin Pilkington brings it home in 13th place for SimSport.
Yeah, and I'm sure, it's a great race, to be honest, wasn't it? I mean, the Clash of Communities, it's always nice when you get a variety of drivers, and at the end of the day, it is a fun sort of event. I'm very much hoping that it gets repeated, to be honest, Steve, because I don't think next round is actually broadcasted, which is a bit of a shame, but I could be wrong. I think it's being hosted by PPR this time around, so with any luck, fingers crossed they have something in the pipeline. I'm sure it won't be you broadcasting, because you'll be actually competing in the Porsche, won't you?
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I'm pretty sure PPR are going to broadcast it, so it will be out there to watch, and it'll be on PPR's YouTube channel. That's the way the Clash of the Communities is working, that we're all taking it in turns to organise a round and stream around. We just happen to do the streaming for SRHI as well as SimSport, so that's why you've had us 2 weeks on the bounce, but next week the PPR guys are in charge and they will produce the stream and let us all see the action, which I'm sure will be absolutely fantastic as ever.
I hope everybody's enjoyed having us 2 weeks on the bounce as well, Steve, that's for sure. But I'm just curious to see how this one's going to end, to be honest. I'm invested in it now. So as we see a few replays coming up on the screen as well, just to give us a bit of a reminisce of the action. But hopefully we'll have a few drivers maybe jumping into the interview room. Unfortunately, we can't actually move them into the interview room, which into the comms box, is a bit of a shame. But with any luck, somebody will.
Well, we'll jump down into their room with them, Jack, and just do the interviews down there. As we currently watching some of the highlights from the racing this evening, and what racing it was. We just see a couple of SimSpot cars getting involved in a couple of battles there, and PPR gaining some advantages there. And the race, the start looked relatively clean, Jack. It looked like some good close racing at the beginning. There was one or two bits of contact, but generally to get 30 cars round the opening few corners, it looked pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you're often expecting some sort of bumps and bruises along the way, aren't you? But the last thing you want is any race-ending incidents for anybody. And these drivers, we've said it quite a few times, they're very experienced, they're very good. And so it's not entirely surprising that they sort of blend into that. They know what an endurance race entails. You mentioned it at the beginning of the broadcast, Steve, that you don't necessarily win a race on turn one, but you can lose it on turn one. And all these guys know that. They're far too experienced for any of that sort of nonsense. So really glad that we didn't see too many huge incidents at the beginning or indeed throughout the race. To be honest, I thought the racing was fantastically clean for the most part. It was nice and close, good, respectful. Drivers defended hard, but I never actually really saw something that made me think, ooh, that's a bit touch and go. That's a bit naughty. So I'm very pleased about that. And that's why people keep coming back to these sort of communities to do their racing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is good to be involved, and like I say, it's a great idea, and it's a great concept, and hopefully it will grow, because I know the chaps are really enjoying it. It gives the community something to come together for, and it also gives the lads that are racing it's something to race for, rather than just racing for yourself in a bit of an individuals championship, or even racing with your mate, as it were, in your little privateer teams, as it were. You are now part of the community team, and there's 10 of you on track, and it throws up a few strategy options, because obviously you don't want to impede your teammates and things like that. So where normally you may be battling someone on track, it's a case of if they catch you make that decision maybe to let them through and not hold them up too much. So it's a little bit more, when you're racing for the community, I won't say you race any harder or anything, but maybe it just means that little bit more to the drivers than it does when they're just racing for fun, shall we say, or just in another league. But been fantastic concept, and it's been pretty well organised, and I'm sure after a debrief after the fourth round of this one, and all the admins get together and have a discussion, I'm sure there'll be some minor tweaks made, some improvements made, and I would like to think it'll be coming back again.
A bit of community pride in there, I'm sure, as you were saying, wearing the crest on their chest with pride. I think having a look, because we're just still waiting for any drivers to jump in the interview waiting room. I think that PPR actually might jump SSR in the championship points after that one, because we saw I think 3 out of the top 4 were all PPR drivers, and SR and SimSport I don't think really had anybody in the top 5. So it could be a bit touch and go for your provisional lead going into this round. Anyway, Steve, you'll have to hustle that Porsche round Donington for a race victory, I think, to try and claw back some points.
Yeah, now I know you're joking. They're definitely not. Obviously, I'll be giving it my all. I'm going to have to put some serious practice in this weekend, and I wasn't joking when I said I need to get my track medals. I've not turned a wheel on Donington, so I'll be looking for a setup. I'll be looking to try, and as ever, I'm not the quickest driver, never have been, but I do pride myself on being able to be consistent, and that often counts for a lot in a race. But yeah, I'm out of practice. I'm focused a lot more on commentating and streaming in the last 12 months, really. So I've not got the wheel time of a lot of the guys. But just touching on the the championship. I mean, SSR. I can speak for SSR. We organised this championship, PPR, SRHI, SSR. It was all organised within a couple of weeks, and SSR have got their own esports team. We compete in other leagues, actively looking for leagues to compete in outside of SSR, just to spread the SimSport name, and you compete against other drivers in other communities anyway. And they had a pretty full calendar, so we struggled. I'm not making any bones about it. We struggled to get 10 drivers for the very first round, and even for this round. So to see what the guys have done, I'm really, really pleased, and they've put on a good performance. But they all have, PPR, SRHI. I'm trying to remain impartial as I should be as a commentator. I think everybody's put on a good performance, and that's round 2. We're halfway through the championship. We've got Donington next week. That's going to be an interesting one because that is going to be a difficult track to pass at. There is lots of opportunities to make mistakes there. I mean, just to you, Jack, I mean, where does Donington rank in your favourite tracks to drive in the real world? Obviously, being driving the Ginetta, how did it rank for you?
I mean, to be fair, Donington has, from the get-go, when I first drove it, has pretty much been my favourite track. I mean, everybody says that Alton Park is potentially one of probably the best British track to drive. Or Brands Hatch, I actually tend to disagree. I think Donington's got a lovely flow to it. Yeah, it's not the longest, but it's got a lovely flow to it as Donington, and it does always. Everybody always says, your favourite track is the one you're fastest at, and it helps that I held a track record there and got a few wins and stuff like that. But I do love it, and with any luck, if you do another series or another Clash of the Communities, maybe you can have the full British GT DLC on it, so you can have the likes of Snetterton and Alton Park, mainly because I like both of them as well. I got a win at Snetterton as well, and Alton Park's obviously my home circuit, so I'd love to commentate on those for this community, but we'll see. Obviously, Donington is wicked, but I mean, if you're struggling for drivers, Steve, I'll have to don the red suit maybe, and then you'll know you're really scraping the barrel.
Well, maybe you and me should do some hot lapping in the Porsche at Donington and see who comes out on top, and they can represent some spot, because I don't think there'll be much in it, mate. But to be fair, it's looking like the drivers are spraying the champagne and forgetting to come to the interview. So I think we just need final thoughts and maybe a roundup on this week before we go away to practice and head to Donington next week.
Yeah, I think you're completely right there. I think it was a fantastic showing by the Bentleys. I think Mazzano proved that although it's very, very difficult to pass, I think Macaulay and especially Zimmerman showed that the Bentleys were the strongest, and Zimmerman showed that you can carve through the field nice and quickly. In fact, we're seeing him on a little move of Simon Wilkes there on the highlights, but. It shows that anywhere is possible to pass on any track. It just takes some inventiveness and some fantastic driving. We got on the show today.
Spoke too soon, Jack. We do have 2 drivers down in the interview room. Shall we drop down there and I'll let you ask some questions?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Was a great race.
Good evening and welcome to. I know it's the interview waiting room, but we can't drag you into the comms box, so we're going to call this the comms box now. We're going to go to you, Simon Zimmerman, first. I mean, it was a recovery ride, but that looked like a 75-minute sprint race, didn't it?
It did, and it was. I mean, I had 2 drift whatever corners and almost lost it twice. And then I think I could have kept up with Macaulay. It's too bad, but still, I mean, I had to pit early. Tires were gone after the drift, so I did. And then I had some great fights in the midfield. Like, that was really something, especially like the fight with Niels and Mitchell, the 3-way fight. My God, my heart was pumping. That was quite a good race.
I was going to say, that was 15 minutes of heart-pumping action, even from the comms box, let alone what it's like sat behind the wheel. I imagine your palms are sweaty, and I wouldn't like... I wouldn't like to have a look at your seat afterwards.
Careful, Jack. Careful, mate.
Well, my USB fan did its job really well. Without it, I would have, melted away.
I'm sure it did. And so, I mean, obviously you picked up some right good pace here, didn't you? Last time out, I believe you didn't quite crack into the top 10, but here at Mazzano, it seemed to suit you a little better, didn't it, than Bathurst? Talk us through. Did you just have a bit more prep this time to go into Mazzano, or was Bathurst just a little bit of an unlucky one?
Well, I had the same strategy at Bathurst. I did not want to drive over the mountain with used tires and, worn thread and no thread on it. And I did the same thing at Bathurst, and I ended up in think P6, and this time it worked even better, despite the traffic, despite fights being held up by people not in the same race. I mean, happens, but it's the same strategy. This time it just worked out better, because I thought Misano is a track that, with my driving style, I could not carry one set of tires through 75 minutes.
Well, you certainly made 2 sets of tyres work extremely well. I have to say that for sure. There was 1 or 2 points where I thought maybe you wouldn't get that. You wouldn't get through Niels van der Kerkelt because it was extremely close once or twice. He really knows where to put a car to make it hard, doesn't he? Even with the disparity between the times that you two have.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. I mean, you just gotta wait until like the one tires show their disadvantage and then take advantage of it. I mean, it might happen, it might never happen, but be patient and it usually pays off.
Absolutely. Well, before we let you go, Simon, is there anybody you'd like to give a quick shout out to before we let you enjoy the champagne?
Well, thanks for Mitchell and Niels for a great race. I had some other great fights as well. Can't remember their names right now, but kudos to all the guys I raced with. That was cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Simon. We'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Well done on the 2nd place.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
And that was Simon Zimmerman, Steve. And I tell you what, we've got one other driver. We'll let you have a chat to Sem, who is still with us, I believe, Sem.
Yeah, definitely.
Good evening, Sem, my hero. Yes, I shouted you out quite a lot in that stream because obviously, you've raced with SimSport Racing, but more recently, you obviously with SRHI have commentated on you in the GT4s in particular. And when you had that little bit of contact at the beginning, I said to Jack on air that you're not a driver that your head doesn't go down. You may drive angry for a couple of corners, but you soon calm down, settle into a pace. And I said you will be there at the end of the race. You'll be up there fighting for good positions, and there you were, mate. I mean, did your head drop down at the beginning? I think it was Cody made contact with you at the start and sort of pushed you off a little bit.
Yeah, it was a bit of a hectic first few laps. I mean, first lap was already really unfortunate. I had contact with, I think it was a Lamborghini. I can't remember who it was, but came out of, what was it, the fast left-hander for turn 5 or so. And I came to the outside, and the Lamborghini went to the inside, and I think it was a little bit of a slide or a mistake, so we immediately went back to the right. But my front, the car was already besides to him, so he went straight to the wall. So that was really unfortunate to see. We could have had a nice fight, so that was really bad. But then, just had to keep going because I don't think I could have done much there except go straight on the brakes, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a frenetic opening few laps with obviously 30 cars of equal ability on the drivers. Very, very close racing, as qualifying showed. The times were pretty close in quali. The Porsche, it's not the easiest or the fastest car in the Kunos garage at the moment, is it? It's respect to you for trying to get the best out of it, but you're up against it a little bit, I think, with the Porsche at the moment. Is it a car you find easy to drive?
Well, I think everyone knows that the Porsche is probably the hardest car to drive in this game, but it's also really rewarding to drive it. My teammate in the GT3, he was like, "Yeah, let's go for the Porsche," so I was kind of forced into it, but the car is really starting to grow on me. I think it's really nice car to just push it through the corners, but then again, it really lacks top speed, so overtaking is really, really hard. But in this race, I just went for a long stint, tried to get stuck in as little traffic as possible. I mean, after the punt from Cody, I had 15, 17 seconds damage or so. So I wasn't sure about whether I should make it to the end or just go for repairs and tires. But I thought I would just stick it out because my lap times weren't that bad. So just kept going. And in the end, I think I made up from, after the punt, I was P20 back to P10. So yeah, that was quite nice.
Yeah, it was a mega drive, mate. And then, to be honest with you, not just saying this, I knew you'd be there because I know, like I say, I've seen you racing now in quite a few races, and you do get your head down. And you, if anyone has to do a recovery drive, I know you will always bring it home and improve on where you are. Just one question on the Porsche, though. I mean, tyres wise, what was it like on the tyres? Was it fairly aggressive? Was there any way you think you could have get to the end without changing tyres, or was it you just need to change tyres because the pace difference was going to be too great?
Yeah, so
I trying to pick up tips for next week. That's
absolutely what I'm trying to do. I'm in the Porsche next week, Sam. Yeah.
It's on to you, man. So I didn't change the tyres actually. So
didn't, right.
I kept them on. I think that perhaps if you really have a good pace, then tire switch might be better. But at the start, I couldn't really take advantage of the raw pace of the Porsche because in the corners it's quick, but then I'm stuck behind the cars and on the straights they just pull away. So I decided to just nurture them and try and keep them together. Don't push too hard. Kept the lap time stable. I think that really did the trick today. So.
Well, it was a great drive, Sam, and it was a pleasure watching everybody on track tonight, and it's been a great second round to what is a fantastic Clash of the Communities. It's a great concept, and I'm sure we're going to have we've got Donington next week. I'm sure we're going to have an equally good race, although I'm not quite sure where I'll fare in that. I think I might just run around at the back and let other people trip up and see how many positions I can pick up like that. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be good fun. But Sam, fantastic drive tonight, and like I say, great recovery drive, and well done, buddy.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Well, Jack, I think that pretty much concludes round 2 Mazzano, with a few technical issues beyond our control at the beginning. We got it all underway. We got some great racing. We raced into the darkness. We raced with very low track temperatures, which I'm sure raised their own problems, created their own problems for the drivers. But everyone managed their races pretty well. Few incidents here and there, but class above Joe McCauley. That was absolutely an inspired drive. To be fair, anyone that knows how Joe McCauley races, somebody needed to take that challenge to him, or that's exactly what he was going to do, and there was nobody, unfortunately, this evening that was on the same playing field as him.
No, I mean, Boothby obviously was going to be an obvious candidate for that job, but obviously, had more bad luck in the Clash of Communities. He's destined never to really complete a race at this rate, I think. And obviously, Zimmerman had that, was going for some early apexes and some drifting right at the start. So, it was Boothby, it was McCauley's race to win, and he did it expertly. We didn't see him too much on the broadcast, but we also didn't see him put any feet wrong. So that's very impressive. What's left to do, I think, Steve, is probably to sign off and look forward to next week.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I mean, thank you. It's been a pleasure commentating with you, Jack, and it's been an absolutely awesome stream. So from me, it's thanks a lot, buddy, and interesting to see who the show next week. And like I say, tune into PPR, into their YouTube. They will be streaming it. I'm sure there'll be some links going up anytime soon to let you know when and where. But watch out for Donington Clash of the Communities round 3 next Thursday evening at the same time, 7:30.